Councillors, staff, members of the gallery, welcome to the council meeting for Tuesday the 25th of February. And in doing so, I'd like to acknowledge the land that we meet on, the traditional lands of the Kaurna people, and we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the Adelaide region and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important to the living Kaurna people today. I also read you the council pledge. We seek wisdom and understanding as we face the duties of our united task, praying for the peace and prosperity of our city. Please be seated. Now, joining us tonight, we have Deputy Mayor Larwood is zooming in and he's watching from this camera feed here. So as you know, whoever's talking will get the camera feed. So if you're talking, wave. Hello, Deputy Mayor. He's unable to participate. The legislation doesn't allow absent members to participate electronically, which is still a bit sad. But to make up for that in a way, we're delighted to have with us some of the elected members from the Port Adelaide Enfield Council. And in the gallery we have none other than Mayor Claire Bowen from Port Adelaide Enfield. Very warm welcome to you. And Councillor Barbara Clayton and Councillor Carol Martin and Councillor Peter Jamieson was not coming. Not here yet. Might turn up. Well, you're very, very welcome. And they are here to test us to see... No, they're here. They're here to observe and to learn. And it's a great idea and it's something that I encourage all elected members to do. And it's a reminder to me, I haven't done it for a while, but just to go and see how other councils deal with the great business of being in local government. Tonight on leave, we have no one on leave. We have an apology from Deputy Mayor. Other than that, everybody is here. Declaration by members of a conflict of interest. Are there any to declare tonight in any matter? There being none, we'll move on to confirmation of minutes. So could someone please move that we confirm the minutes from Tuesday the 28th of January to be taken as read and confirmed as a true record?
So moved.
Councillor Barnett, do you wish to speak to them?
No.
Go to second. Councillor Happy. Alan Harris, do you wish to speak? Happy as I am. All good. Any other debate? That being the case, I don't need to ask you, Councillor Barnett, to sum up your excellent opening speech.
No, thank you.
Right, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Thank you. Next item is public question time. And we don't have any carryover answers from before, do we? Sorry, no. So we're all up to date. Thank you. So I'll open public question time. We have 15 minutes for public question time. Are there any questions from members of the gallery? If you'd like to come forward, Mr. Standen. Is there a chair for the deputy?
No, that's okay. I'll stand next to Alan. I'm happy to stand.
No, I'm just actually, Mr. Standen, I'm more worried that we've lost a chair somewhere. I'm sure the staff will find it later on.
I've got plenty of money on the eBay. Don't worry.
That would be for the Deputy Mayor. Anyway, sorry, just a mild distraction. Have 15 minutes and you have 3 if you need it for your question. Sorry.
And I understand I've got to give my name and address. It's Mark Standen, 7 Mawson Street, Nailsworth. A very simple question this month. What's the status and progress on the Kaufland site, and has any thought been given to approaching the company with regard to doing something in a community vein with the current site?
Okay, I could probably answer that from the chair. I think I probably had the most recent contact with the project manager, I think as recently as Thursday last week. Kaufland Australia are obviously very embarrassed that their parent company has said no more. They have very few sites actually under construction. The one in Prospect is, I believe, in the lead, so it's the most constructed of any of them. They therefore have to exit Australia and in the process sell all their assets. That's their strategy. They were contemplating whether to sell it as a finished building, as a finished shell, as it is at the moment, or to knock it down. They haven't concluded their thinking on that, but they are moving towards selling all of their sites across Australia. I think there are 9 across 3 or 4 states. Is that right? And this being one of them, and selling them as a single line. So we're communicating that we'd much rather they sold the Prospect site separately. We think that's probably its best outcome. We're not terribly happy with someone in another state buying it because they want sites elsewhere and they get these as a bonus. We'd rather someone bought it who loved it. So that's their strategy at the moment, yet to be confirmed, but that's where they're moving towards, and they're expecting that sale process to commence in March, so they're moving quite quickly. You would have seen some construction activity on site, and that is because they're yet to decide when to stop construction, and they'll make that determination themselves in conjunction with their builder. The second part of your question was, have we approached them for a community use? Not specifically, no. We've offered them every assistance in making the sale as easy as it can be from a council interface. So there are some arrangements. There's a deed in place to ensure that the public road gets built within the site, and they have bonded that with a deposit with council, the bank guarantee, and that will stay alive, and we'll make sure that that is known to all the purchasers who are interested. So we'll make sure all that side of it's tidied up, but no, we haven't asked them for a community use. Thank you for the idea.
Great answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions from members of the gallery? No, that being the case, we'll conclude public question time. Petitions we have nil, deputations we have nil.
I know that just a question that happened then. Did we answer his question? He wasn't here the last one, and he had a previous question about the petrol and stuff like that. Did we send that to him, or?
I'll take that as a question without notice, because that's the section we're in right now, councillor, so good timing.
Okay, my question without notice is, did we reply to him because of what Mark Stanton last time personally?
CEO, the question we provided at the meeting, did that get conveyed to Mr. Stanton?
Through your chair, Simon. We certainly answered it here.
Through the chair, as the policy, we minute the answer. We don't send an answer directly to the deputy or the person asking the question. It forms part of the council minutes the next following meeting.
Yep, and I'm pretty sure that Mr. Stanton's aware of the answer. So, but that might be a process improvement we could think about. Yeah, the question. Are there any other questions without notice? Councillor Barnett.
Yes, I have one. I noticed an advertisement in either today or yesterday's Advertiser about the property for sale in Arthur Street, Kiandra, what was known as Kiandra, the hospital. And I was just wondering, I know under law the real estate people are supposed to notify everything about the heritage area, because that's part of our public local heritage listing. That's my question.
So your question is what specifically, councillor?
My question is, how can we make sure that people are inquiring about it, or the real estate people are aware of it's part of the local heritage?
Oh, and pass it on. Okay. Yep. CEO.
Through you to
Director.
Yeah, through the chair, essentially with any sale of a property, whilst we're receiving inquiries as a planning department, as you could understand, given the size of the sign and the size of the site, with any sale that progresses, there's an obligation under the Real Estate Act to provide a Section 7 search, sometimes called a Section 187. That provides the details. Council has to undertake a search, provide details to the real estate agent, and that gets passed on as part of the due diligence contract of sale, whether there's any building fire safety notices, what zoning it's in, whether there's any plan amendments underway, and whether there is any local heritage listing. So that process would be underway. The search has probably been undertaken, but if it has a 3-month life, so if the sale doesn't proceed within 3 months, a new one will occur, but that gets provided as part of the Form 1s with any contract of sale.
Thank you. Any further questions without notice? Councillor Harris.
Because now I realise it is. The situation in the parklands, and I'm not talking about the Crows set up, but the deal we've got, or the agreement we got with the Adelaide City Council and the government, and the tennis courts are done and finished. Where are we, I think, with the car park alongside it, the pathway and the lights? Is that going to happen, or is that we just end at the tennis courts?
Very good question, councillor.
through you, Chair, to the Director of Infrastructure.
Through the chair, yes, we have an agreement with the Adelaide City Council. They're, as you said, they've finished the tennis courts, basketball courts. The next stage is the Prospect Road section of the streetscape upgrade. That includes a common shared bikeway / pedestrian path along that section of Prospect Road. Includes water sensitive urban design, new street trees, new curb and guttering. So that's all included as part of the next stage of the upgrade. And that's, from memory, we'll be going out to tender very shortly.
Right, that's where I was at. So it's still not there yet.
No.
It's not been a priority
No.
for the LA City Council at this stage.
Years and counting. Any further questions of that notice? Councillor Groot.
Yeah, I might just do one, thank you. Just on the similar topic to Councillor Harris, have we been approached in relation to the North Parklands, have we been approached by the Adelaide Crows or the Adelaide City Council to provide a briefing to our council on the current matters?
I am not aware of that. CEO?
The CEO of the Adelaide Crows wants to meet with me shortly for a briefing, and an elected member will be joining me. We're just trying to work out what member that will be. But certainly the Crows have approached us. I'm not aware of the Adelaide City Council approaching us. And I'll bring a briefing back to elected members on what the Crows are saying. So Andrew Fagan.
There's certainly been a lot of discussion that I've been having with people, but your question is about a formal approach. It is, yeah. There's not been a formal approach. There's been an informal approach from Adelaide for a meeting. Yeah. That if people are interested, the CEO could maybe convey that and ask them to come and give us a briefing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe just following that, I'd be interested in us, and I'll phrase this as a question, I'd be interested in us having a formal position on this at some point. And my question is, would the briefing suffice with enough information to do that?
Don't know until I hear it.
I'm talking about your briefing back to us.
Oh, well, hopefully, but it's a very complex issue.
It is, yeah.
And we'll hear the Crows' perspective.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are other perspectives, and there are other stakeholders. One of the reasons why the Mayor might not be joining me is that he has another role which might has an impact. So I'll be seeking the support of the Deputy Mayor for that meeting, if not perhaps Councillor. But I certainly will come back with a briefing. It's just a question of whether we can land.
Just briefly, my interest is with Blackfriars and the playing surfaces, which the Crows want to take over part for an oval. But the whole proposal means the demise of the current aquatic centre, which I don't have any conflict of interest with, but there are a number of people who have contacted me, and I presume you, about what the new aquatic centre will look like, and of course that's a bit of a fuzzy space. So if we're going to have a briefing, CEO, it might be good to get a briefing from somebody about the aquatic centre component. Yes. And the Adelaide Footy Club are not the people to get that from, because they haven't had an instruction on what to build, of course. So it's a very strange space. Good question. Any further questions that notice, Councillor Rip?
Just on that topic, I'd be interested to know whether through the admin email or directors, if we've had much response or feedback from our own City of Prospect residents on what their thoughts are. I mean, admittedly, I've only had a couple of people raise it with me generally, and it wasn't a firm position one way or the other. It was more just up in a discussion point. But has the council itself received much feedback on this issue from our own residents, not lobby groups or interest groups or outside other council residents?
I'm seeing lots of your directors' head shake no.
So, Councillor, a quick assessment of the directors' no. We're not seeing any traffic on that and no particular position. I think it's still an emerging issue for a lot of people. But certainly I take Councillor Groot's position that we will at some point have to come to a landing.
I've had a handful, a couple of those asking for this council to form a position. I find that difficult. There's been nothing from the floor. And I have directed them to the community consultations, which finishes on the 10th of March. Is that the date? So
Change it, so I don't know if that's when it's
It
changed.
was the 19th of Feb, so it's been extended to, I think, 10th of March. So if we wanted to form a position and get it into that process, we'd have to hurry, but just letting you know they're the current dates. So no other questions without notice. Move on, thank you. Into the reports for decision. The first of those, item 10.1 regarding Galway Avenue, Jellicoe Street and Ream Street roundabout proposal. The CEO has withdrawn because new information has come to hand. And that's only very recent, so the process from now to us you'll be advised on whether it comes to the next council meeting or goes to workshop or wherever that might be. So if you've got an interest in that item, please feel free to contact the CEO or the director directly. If you're in the gallery tonight about that item, I'm sorry, we won't be discussing that item tonight. So, it's been withdrawn. Therefore, we're on to item 10.2, which is the Balfour and Howard Streets intersection design options with a recommendation on pages 8 to 9. And I have had a brief discussion with the staff about this. There's a number of options. This is the first time we've seen the options, and I wondered if could be your indulgence to suspend meeting procedures to have a discussion around the process and the number of options to make sure that we deal with this efficiently, I guess. So seek your leave to suspend meeting procedures until let's say 7:45 should we need it. We can always come back earlier. All those in favour? Against it is carried. Okay, so just a bit of background. The issue's been on the books for several months. I think, Simon, far back as mid last year.
Early last year we received a petition.
Okay, so it's been a petition. We've known about the issue a long time. Very brief potted history, lots of traffic management issues in the east. We dealt with them in 2007 and 8. This was one of the intersections that was mooted for a closure or a half-road closure. The community said no way. So we've done a modified intersection to try and achieve a result of lowering speed, but not volume. So the device that went in was as a result of that whole process. There's always been complaints about it because it's a pretty severe device, because it's a pretty major intersection. And so the petition came. I know Councillor Harris or Alan, you've been particularly insistent on having some minor items fixed, and they've been done in the short term. This is more about the longer term. So reports come to us, there's lots of options. My question to the staff was, are we actually happy to go and ask our community about all 5 of these options, or a lesser number, or none of them? And we hadn't had that discussion. So perhaps let's start there. So Alan.
Yeah, just 2 things, because I mainly want to go to the 5. The first thing that in this whole intersection that becomes important is, as David said, 208 or 209, in that period of time, there was some few things done to roads around that area. And one of the areas that was going to happen, and we used to have in front of us a map of streets. We don't have it anymore, so hopefully everyone knows the streets. But if you look in the Pacific area where we're talking about now, there's California Street, Howard Street, Balfour Street, Rolfe Street and Emily Street. So in amongst those discussions that was happening, it was looked at trying to get the flow of the residents flowing through the Balfour and down that way through Rolfe Street, which at the moment's a 2-way street, Rolfe Street into Emily, into the shopping centres, and then back mainly on the main road. So it was trying to get a circle opposed to people going each way. And by then I wasn't on council, so for some reason the Rolfe Street didn't happen. It stayed as a 2-way street, but the Howard Balfour coincided with that Rolfe Street being closed to create it. So the initial reason it was there wasn't 100%. The petition come January last year, but prior to that people have been jumping on it. My concern comes with it, and we got 5 various reasons. And here I'll say, like, they range in cost from about 7,500 up to 341. And I might add, I'm only speaking as myself here and talking to, so I've only seen Thursday, and this is where I think some of the problem comes. I only seen Thursday night when I got my things that in my head, there's only 2 real ones that work. The main one that will come from residents is just get rid of it altogether. Reality is I don't actually agree with that, and I don't think it's right, not just that I don't agree with that. So something should be done because of that intersection. So, but that will be what a lot of the local ones, and I mean in Balfour and Howard, would say. Then you look at the things and you look at the roundabout, which I'd find very hard in where it is, because trucks, I think, would just wouldn't even bother about it. They just keep moving. Someone with caravans and some of the people that are, I'm not sure if they got licenses, but they have four-wheel drives and go to the school. They won't be going around it. They'll be going the opposite way. So the only two sensible things that could fit in here, in my opinion, the worst thing about it is the one that costs $341. That's the dearest one with the build-up T-junction, I thought it was the cheapest, but it's not. The one down at the bottom, I believe it is, of having the control thing. So when you look at the diagrams, so to put something to residents, what do you want? Do you want a $7,000 job? Because there's one here that says close off Balfour Street, and Balfour Street turning into Howard, and you won't get a good response from residents for that because we've closed the other streets, correctly so. And so that's their way to go through and up Galway and out.
So in your view, which ones do you think are worth consulting on?
Well, I would then go to number 5. You know, I think the most dearest one is also not too bad. But again, that's what's coming up to us tonight. And if we say we put out these things and people say it, then we've got to find $341,000. And to me, right, without a budget alongside it, which we haven't got, and looking at it and those sort of things, it'll be a Broadview Oval again. Yes, that's a good idea that you all want, and we can't pay it.
Okay, so let's get a few other views. I'm worried about the most expensive one because those plateaus are very noisy when the tyres slap into them. So,
and can I just ask one question on that same one, the patio? Uncomfortable for vehicle passengers, what is that? They hit their head in the roof, or I didn't know what that meant.
Essentially, yes.
Any bump.
Okay. Poor buggers.
I'm all for keep it simple. I won't add stupid on the other end. So you're going from what was a regular like T intersection basically, and then because some things happened there, and it's been absolutely, in my opinion, made overcomplicated. I use it reasonably frequently, and I was nearly wiped out there, not through my fault because I actually stopped. But it's when you come up from Balfour and you reach Howard, you cannot see what's coming around the corner. They cannot see you unless you poke out. And then you've got to navigate, the wriggle one, which is very tight. And if I had a four-wheel drive, I'd probably opt to go straight over it as well. So I think, for goodness sake, let's common sense prevail. Let's look, and again, I mean, we can't legislate about just stupidity, that's the problem. But we have to make it safe. I always thought that road rules and road signage and things, treatments that we did on road were to make it what would be an expected thing. So if you're approaching an intersection that's a T1 and you can't go any further unless you go under the person's driveway, that you would normally stop. There's no, and then you would either go left, or you would go right. If you're coming from the other way and heading that way, you've got carte blanche, basically, to just keep going. Ignore whoever's there or come the other way. So the common expectation of common sense, to my mind, doesn't exist. So that's more the approach I would like.
Well, let's zero in here. We've had an engineer's report which the good people of Prospect have paid for. They've come up with 5 options. Let's keep it simple. I'm going to declare them as expert as anybody. Which options out of the 5 do we think we should consult on, if any? Councillor Alan's proposed number 5. Yep.
Sorry, Tommy. I think for me it'll be number 5, or I don't think the option's there. It's really number 5 for me, or remove it altogether. Remove the device altogether. I think you need to give, because I know, having had a chat to a couple of petitioners, I've heard feedback they'd rather see the whole thing go, and I've heard people say, no, it needs to be modified. So I think one option has to be remove it altogether to at least hear the views of the community from the petition, or number 5.
As an option. Okay. I just ask Simon, in terms of removing it altogether, just a comment, because there is a comment in the report that they think something's worth doing there, but it not expanded on a lot. What's your view?
Not knowing the history before it became a modified intersection back in 2008, whenever it was, it is an option that can be taken. Obviously, there's a reasoning why council installed it back in that time. I'm not sure if I think that the reason is probably even worse now than when it was installed. So I don't see why the removal would necessarily be a suitable option. In saying that, if it's an option that the community really want, especially the residents that live particularly around that intersection, that will have flow-on effects to other streets, though, I believe.
But it's an obvious kind of question, isn't it? I think we've got to take that it's an obvious question. Okay, let's hear a few of you.
Yeah, I'm similar, and I communicate with Nigel just about the approach to it generally. Certainly number 5. Look, there's a couple of items where none of this stuff's in a long-term financial plan. There's some of this traffic management, and it just surprises me where it's coming from without workshops and whatnot. And also, the way we're seeming to approach consultation, there's an assumption that we put things out within a radius, and that's what we base our decision on. That's not. We consider it as part of our decision making. We make a decision for the whole community, and I think sometimes when we word these surveys, there's an assumption that we're basing decision on this survey, and that's not the case. We consider it as part of the other information that comes to us. And I think we have to be really clear on that when we're putting this out to the community.
Good feedback. But number 5 you think is worth asking about. Any other views?
I agree. I frequent that route quite regularly, and I quite honestly have never had a real problem with it. It might be the time I gave it. I don't think it warrants spending up towards the 341,000. So I'd certainly go for the lower option, or take it away altogether.
So 5 or 1?
5. 5.
Yeah. It's popular. Mark?
With enough speed, it's pretty easy to get through it in a four-wheel drive, I'd have to say. But look, for me, I'm just going back to what problem we're trying to solve here. So if you look at the crash data, there's been no crashes there for the last 5 years. We've got a 40 km/h zone coming in. And the issue from memory, and I'll happy to be stand corrected, when the petitioners came in, they talked about the height of the vegetation around. So one of the things out of that particular motion was we got that cut down quite a bit. And I think that was part of the issue around line of sight when you come down Howard Street into Balfour. So for me, I would kind of still question, do we need to do anything if we've got 40 km/h zone, noting that they're probably going lower than that anyway, but we've got a 40 km/h zone coming in. If we deal with the vegetation height, is that enough or not? I don't live in that particular ward, so I'd take the advice of others. If we did do something, I would go 1 or 5 as well. I agree with that. I wouldn't support a $300,000 investment into that particular intersection. But I just picking up Councillor Tobacco's point around consultation, I think we need to be really, really careful, because there is an expectation if we go out with 1 option or 5 options or 3 options, there's an expectation that we will do that. And so we need to be very, very clear. We go with a $300,000 option, we need to do the $300,000 option if that's what the advice comes back, and we agree with that. Or if that's what the consultation comes back with, and we agree with that consultation advice. So anyway, so question mark for me, do we need to do anything with those other issues being addressed, number 1? Number 2, if we do, it'll be 1 or 5.
Thank you. Christine?
So I forgot to add, and picking up on what other councillors have said, that I would... depending what happened, I was going to move an amendment to part 2 of that, which is about the commuter survey. And I was going to say, and just on the end of it, and place a survey on council's website, because there are people, like we've just said, elected members, live way over on the western side, the northern side, so it's not just people within 500 metres that read it, that use it and experience it and whatever. So I think whatever we do, that we should just place the survey, or that's the way we go, on council's website as well.
So a bit broader, the 500 metres plus a bit broader, or a lot more. Okay. Councillor?
My opinion is
we should reconsider putting out the 5 options. I just think, picking up on Councillor De Backer and Councillor Groot, putting out 5 options, okay, are we going to do one of these 5? And if they do pick the most expensive one, can we then turn around and say, we don't have money for this? That would be embarrassing, humiliating. I think, the option 5 would do, but definitely reconsider putting all 5 options out there.
Okay, brilliant. I think, has everyone had a chance to have a say? I think so. Just from my perspective, I think the most expensive one, I think, is a very noisy option. We get complaints. We've got plateaus elsewhere, and if you want to make them work well, you've got to make them steep and hard, and people don't like it. I think 5's a soft option that can work, but it needs to have some rumble strips on the white lines to stop people cutting across. But I think it's a reasonable option. I do like the idea of asking whether people want it totally removed. And I'm wondering whether we ask people whether they're just happy just to tidy it up, which is kind of option 1. It's just to try and fix what's there. But I was very uncomfortable with asking people about options which we weren't happy to fund. I thought that was a bit pointless. Yeah. So in terms of trying to pull this back together, it sounds like no one's really happy to move the one with 5 options in it. No one's spoken in favour of that. So I will go through the process of asking whether someone will, because that's what we've advertised, but I expect none of you will say yes. I'll then ask if someone wishes to move an alternative, which includes an alternative part 2, which has as option, retains option 1, just because that's kind of like status quo. Option 5 becomes option 2. And option 2.3 becomes remove the device and revert to, how would we phrase that, Director?
T intersection?
A normalised T intersection, to use those words. So, yeah, chevron sign, normal giveaway stuff going on, a normalised T intersection.
Can I just make a comment on that, on the issue about removing it altogether? Because I kind of agree with Councillor Ripp when he said it. But then in the report it talks about Howard Street Drive link was constructed in 2008 to address high speeds and unnecessary through traffic for a street predominantly straight and continuous stretch of road with priority. Not particularly worded well, but like that whole issue about Gun Barrel, Long Street, and I just wonder if the next street or another street's going to come back to us in 12 months' time saying people are now racing down that street, can you do something about it? That's just my thoughts.
Yes, I think it's a good comment. We don't have the pros and cons of that, but I'm sure the staff could get the pros and cons for that option, as like they've got the other options.
It just would be an attractive option on the surface for a lot of people in the community.
I agree.
And I think the impact would be quite great for people in the community who live along Howard Street.
Okay. But sometimes it's good to get the community to think about that.
If we can.
They could.
No,
They could come back and say we want that, but again, we would have to go back and say as a council for the whole area that's not suitable. So I wouldn't even put it up there. I'd just give 2 options personally. If
can I just briefly, add the difference, particularly not just living there, but living there and understand. There's been accidents, even though they mightn't have been reported, and I've seen crash cars, but that part is irrelevant. But there's been so many sort of the close calls of people pull up and jam. The difference between 2.8 when it was built and the idea when it was coming, there's 2 major differences. The school is almost tripled in size, and the cars that are using it now even park halfway up that street. So there's a large volume of it, and I've got a reason for saying that is because the people we had to have a look at it, when they looked at it twice, they saw 3 cars and 1 car, and I think it was about 10 o'clock in the morning. It was a ridiculous thing to make a decision on, that's my opinion, but still it happened. The other difference that has really happened now in the last couple of months that changes it is by Rutherglen and Edwin we've closed off, the people now from Burwood, California, and it's not a big problem, Burwood, California, us, Balfour Street, now they can't get out onto the main northeast Ave Road, they get out on Colin Grove Avenue. Where's Colin Grove Avenue? At the end of Howard Street.
So can I just pull you into the task at hand? Are you interested in asking whether people want to remove it altogether, or you're saying there should be something there?
My problem, and I'll get shot in the streets for this, is a lot of people will say yes. and it's not going to help a bigger problem, you know. And
All right. Well, I'll tell you what I'll do, just to get us moving. What I'll suggest is only we go with two options, and those who are interested in the take it out altogether option, you can move it as an amendment if you want to test the floor, just to get us into a process, okay?
Right.
So at this stage, I'm going to pause back into formal proceedings, ask if anybody wishes to move the recommendations as presented in the publicly advertised agenda. There being nobody, is somebody happy to move the alternate that we go out with two options in part 2, options 2.1 and option 5 as 2.2. Someone happy to move that way?
I'll move it.
Councillor Harris, wish to speak to it?
Yes, just briefly, I'm glad it's sort of come to this stage now after a lengthy time with the director. It's been a lengthy time, but it's been a lengthier time in reality.
Yeah.
So I'm glad it's come to this. The only couple of concerns I have, particularly of people, the two options we put in, I believe, are 1 and 5, is if we do that, if we accept the 1, if the residents accept the 1, we accept the 1 and go down, I still think there's some tidying up on the ends of it that need doing to work properly. So at this stage, let's hopefully we ask the residents about it, perhaps putting an emphasis on that will not be our final decision. We just ask your opinion on it to assist us in doing it.
So in doing so, councillor, as a mover, sorry to jump in, you're then seeking to change the word preference to community's views
Yes.
in the motion?
Yes.
And you have a mind to pick up councillor Barnett's suggestion that the survey also be advertised on our website?
Yes.
Okay, so that as the mover, we'll get you to incorporate those things.
I'm happy to do that.
Great. We'll have a second. I want to move an amendment, don't second it. Councillor Green, you're happy to...
Yeah, look, I'm happy to second it. The only other comment I'd make, which isn't an amendment, but just a comment, in terms of the consultation, one of the biggest impacts around that particular area is Narsworth Primary School. It would be good to maybe get something into the school newsletter or something to let people know we're consulting, as a way just to get parents involved in that conversation, because they are users of those streets often, and they may not necessarily be captured. Not many people are going to go, automatically to our website to say what's been consulted now.
Yep, good suggestion. I'd say the director.
Just a suggestion, but yeah.
Good suggestion. Okay, further debate. Is there any? I'll take councillor Britt first.
I'd like to move an amendment, if possible, please, that we actually add a third option, and that is seek the community's views for removal of the device altogether, if possible.
Okay, thank you. I'll just do what I normally do, which is to ask the mover and seconder if they have to incorporate it. If not, we'll go to a full amendment. Mover, are you happy to incorporate?
Aye.
Don't incorporate if you don't want to.
Oh, well, I'll do it. Yeah.
Happy to incorporate?
Well, I'm not happy, but I'll incorporate it.
Second's not happy to incorporate?
Oh, no. Well, then I'm not. I'll stick with the seconder.
Only one no. It's therefore not going to be incorporated. It becomes an amendment, and you have the floor.
Well, I'm actually happy with the bulk of the motion, but I do believe, having picked up some of the views of the community when I've been out talking, I know this has been an issue on our agenda for quite a while. There are a number of people who have signed that petition and not signed, or who haven't signed the petition as well, that do want us to consider the removal of the device altogether. So I think it's only fair that if we are consulting, that we do pick up some of that sentiment and at least hear the community's views. I do like some of the other commentary before when we went in session, that this is by going out, doing this survey, we will consider the feedback as part of the broader thing. So I don't think there's any harm in us considering the views and having that third option there, because at the end of the day, we are only going to be considering that as part of our decision-making process. It's not a be-all and end-all. And I do really encourage the staff to make that absolutely clear with whatever we do in the survey, that we say to the residents are aware that we're not binded by the results of the survey. They need to be aware that we are considering. I think we need to be really careful with the language that we use, so it doesn't give that perception that we will just go with whatever comes back from that 500 metre radius. I'm also happy that we do look at putting the survey up on the website and hearing the views of the community, or the wider community as well. But I just have a question for whichever director, or through the chair, whichever director wants to pick it up. Is there a way through the survey that we can actually break down by postcode the local views that are shared within, say, that 500 metre radius, and wider views from people, say, that are in the other parts of the council, because I think that's actually really important.
We should be able to, depending on the survey that we use, we should be able to check most votes.
They're all 508.
Yes, I'm told.
Yes.
So there's the, sorry,
So, no,
still wish,
no,
finish speaking to the amendment?
yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for the amendment?
Yes.
Councillor Barnett, do you wish to speak to it?
No.
Was that good?
Is there any further debate on the amendment? Councillor Group.
Can I speak to the amendment? Look, I won't support it, just on the basis of what I said earlier. I think it opens up a Pandora's box, which is going to be very difficult to explain through a community consultation process. The thing, what I would have supported, and of course I can't say it while you're putting the amendment up, was any other option that people might have to see whether that elicits other ideas that we haven't thought about or our experts might want, without necessarily leading people down the path of removal altogether. So I would have been open to that, but I'm sorry I can't support it.
Could be a later amendment.
Somebody else might think of that as a further amendment. Yeah, thank you. Any further debate on the amendment? If not, there's no summing up on an amendment. Now take the vote. All those in favour of the amendment? All those against the amendment? The amendment is successful. It's ticked now, it becomes part of the motion. Any further debate on the motion? That surprised you all, didn't it, Shane? Councillor De Backer.
One of the things that didn't really come through clearly was the impact on cyclists. They did mention pedestrians, and certainly I'll be encouraging our cycling community to contribute to that survey as well, or consultation. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you. Any further debate?
Just sorry,
Councillor Pitts.
just we're going to have cost options to the other two. Will we give a cost option to remove it?
Good question, Director. I presume, yes?
Through the chair, that's right. We'll provide a cost for removal of that option.
Which we would already have, presumably because it's part of the costings for other things, so that won't be difficult. Yeah, good question. Unless there's any further debate, which I can't see, back to Councillor Harris to sum up.
Okay, we got the other bit in, haven't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amendment.
Okay, well, just to finish it off, I urge people to do it. It'll make a sizable amount of people happy. I'm glad one of the speakers suggested, and hopefully we take up some sort of contact with the school, because they're most probably the biggest users of that intersection now. And I just know people will thank me because I moved to get rid of it, even though it wasn't my opinion. So I urge people to vote for the motion.
Thank you. That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. All right. Next item is item 10.3, the Collinswood Shopping Centre Precinct Upgrade. Recommendations on page 37. Somebody happy to move it as presented? Just to speak to it.
Yeah, look, really thank you to the staff for bringing this forward. I'm really excited that we've got something here, and I was happy, obviously, with the design that was brought to us at the workshop. I'm a bit disappointed with how long the process took, because I would have liked to have seen this a bit earlier. But nonetheless, it's good that we'll be able to get some quick wins. But I do encourage the staff, and I have put it in for a future budget submission for consideration. But obviously, future stages, I'd like to see this project actually extend in future stages up to the outer skirts of the ABC building as well, because obviously there's some derelict looking, particular derelict looking building up towards the outer skirts of the ABC, which I think this project could really extend. But in the short term, I'm happy with the quick wins. I'm happy with where it's heading. But I do encourage, if there's going to be a stage 1B before stage 2, that we get some of these other wins on the board for consideration in the budget process. But thank you to the administration for bringing this.
Thank you. I have a seconder. Councillor De Backer, do you wish to speak to it?
Yes, just briefly, I'd just like to commend the staff to getting it to this point, and I think it was really great to be able to spend a good, 45 minutes to an hour talking about that area of our city, which has been sorely neglected for a long time. And I think we've shown that we can excel in placemaking, Prospect Road, and certainly some nodes around the city. And I think this is another one, and Collinswood can shine. So I'd encourage you to support the motion. I know that there is a consideration of allocation future funding, and it is just a consideration. But I just think to tie that project together at a future stage would be really good to see it come to fruition.
Thank you. Any further debate at all? Councillor Barnett?
Just quickly, I support the motion, and I think the other bonus to this is getting the involvement of our neighbouring council, Walkerville Council, and so that could, set us in good stead if there are future activities of similar nature.
Absolutely, yeah. Further debate? Councillor Nguyen?
I look forward to seeing the pop of colour in that area. I just think it will just lift that area up, and the consultation with, if we're going out to the schools to engage them, that would be really good.
Further debate?
Can I ask a question first, please? The 0.3, considering the 50,000, my question, three questions was the first one, we've already put money into it, which is the design part that's happened. So this 50 is on top of that. So if that'll come up in this budget as a new request. And last question is, does that 50 then, what we decided to do here, that comes to that, or is that other work?
Through CEO to the Director.
Through the Chair, the design was done in-house, so there was no design costs. The 50,000 allocated this financial year will go towards quick wins this financial year. So we'll be able to do this year, clean the footpath pavers, plant some advanced street trees in Casey Street, install some street lights, and establish some understory planting. So we'll do that this financial year. $50,000 is to do some other work next financial year, like investigating some more street lights, maybe a parklet, the Wombat Crossing.
Yeah, so this 50 is on top of the previous 50. That's all my question.
Okay, thank you. Any further debate? Back to you, Councillor Rip, if you wish to sum up.
I have a question before I sum up.
Yes, brief question.
Just wanted to also double check that part of the initial motion for this going back quite a while was that a third of this year's art budget actually is funded in here to go towards an art project. How's that been allocated? And has it been spent in this financial year?
Through the Chair, yes, $7,000 has been allocated, and it will be spent this financial year.
On art? On the which the houses? Yes, on the art. Yeah.
Exactly what and exactly where yet to be determined. Yeah. That meeting's the next meeting of the public art body is this Thursday, this week.
So, just in terms of summing up, I've had some obviously using Dulwich Bakery, and had some really positive feedback about the consultation too from the Drake Supermarket, Dulwich Bakery, and another business. They're just saying that they're really excited to actually see something happening in the east, and the common theme, even though I've mentioned it before, it's like a mini Prospect Road that's happening in the east, and that's what people want to see. They've seen council deliver Prospect Road, and they want to see that type of amenity in the east, and that's both business feedback I've had and resident feedback. I'm really excited that we've got a starting point here. I think I'm really, really excited about it, and I know from the feedback of the community, they're excited to see where this goes, both in the short, medium and long term. So really hats off to the administration for bringing this back and kick-starting it, because I think it will be really exciting long term. It's a place making. I want to see the space really develop, and thank you very much.
Thank you. That concludes the debate. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Excellent. Have all the work done by tomorrow's Director. Friday. Just don't say which Friday. Item 10.4, the White Cedar, what's my building background coming through? When's it going to be finished? Friday. 10.4, the White Cedar Replacement Program, recommendations on page 45. Is someone happy to move it as presented?
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Barnett. Do you to speak to it?
Well, I think our part of the city western side, I think we have quite a perhaps majority of the cedar trees, and I think there'll be some residents that I know that approached council quite disappointed about some of the beautiful species that just sort of suddenly got locked. So I think that it would be well worth it. We know that the white cedars contribute to the shade. We are hoping, I think, that the species doesn't fruit, and we don't get the berries. Yes, so I can in council to replace it. It's a budget. We're reallocating the $9,000 to this from this cedar basement program over into the green tunnel. So, it's a sensible solution.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor De Backer, if you should speak to it. Further debate. Councillor Groot.
Yeah, so just a question and then an amendment, if I may. So under the street sweeping and footpath blowing program section of the paper, which is on page 50 of the agenda, program duration talks about 6 days. Can I just get an explanation of what that 6 days means? Does that mean 6 days in a month, in a week, in that period of November to February? I'm just not sure how to interpret that.
Thank you. Director?
Through the chair, that's 6 dedicated days in that whole time, yes. That's whole days dedicated to the berry season.
So that's 3 days in, 6 days in 3 months. That's 2 days a month. It's one a fortnight, half a week. Yeah.
Depends what the berry.
Yes, I think that's, from memory, that's been the service standard for quite a number of years.
Okay. So what I'd like to do with an amendment is to simply add on. So what I'm concerned about is I agree with the motion. I'm supportive of it. I will vote for it. But I know that there's, let me say, in saying that, I've dealt with a number of people over the years who have had trees taken out that they want to keep, and I've had people not had trees taken out where they want to get rid of them. You can't kind of win. So I think going on a case-by-case basis, and I think that started about 2.5 years ago, I think it's a really, really good idea. So very, very supportive. I think it makes sense. However, we do have an issue with berries on footpaths, and half a day a week over 3 months during berry season I don't think is enough. So what I'd like to do is in section 3, where it says council reallocates $9,000 annual allocation in the annual business program, blah, 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 towards the Green Tunnel program effective in 2019-20 and additional street sweeping services. I don't want to put a figure on that because I don't know how much it would cost to have 1 day a week for those 3 month period, or whether we need it for the entire 3 month period, or whether there's intensive time. But I'd like to build in some capacity for us to say we're about to save $90,000. Most of it should go to the Green Tunnel, supportive of that. But how do we actually increase that service standard a little bit to make sure we can sweep those on maybe a more regular basis than what we do now?
Okay, thank you. As I normally do, I'm happy to ask the mover and seconder if they're happy to incorporate. Councillor Barnett.
I just have a query, perhaps through to the director. If we use street...
Allow a brief question while I'm getting...
have a street sweeping, so does that involve cleaning footpaths with a blower and then comes, or is it just the actual gutter sweeper?
Through the chair, no, some of it is actual footpath blowing the seeds onto the street, and the street sweeper comes on and picks them up.
All right, I'm satisfied, I'm happy.
Yes. Perhaps for the absence of doubt, if I could ask the potential amender to say additional berry sweeping services just to cover footpaths and the street.
Very happy with that.
Yeah.
Very happy with that. So as a mover, you're happy to incorporate, and Councillor De Backer, would you be happy to incorporate? Yes or a no? Not a question, please.
No.
No. Okay, then it becomes an amendment. Have you finished speaking to the amendment?
Oh, not now. She said yes, I would. No, look, I just think one of the issues that I do get a lot of complaints about is in berry season. It is something that comes up quite often. I think, as I said, I'm really supportive of the Green Tunnel program. I think we need to put as many resources into that as possible. I just think we absolutely need to make sure our footpaths are safe because people are tripping over them. People are being injured as a result of that. If we can go to whatever extent we can reasonably to make sure we are cleaning streets and footpaths, I think it's a good option. I think just while I've got the floor, because I won't have it again after this, I actually got an email today from a resident who was very grateful for the street sweeping service and wanted me to pass on a compliment to council, which I'll do now publicly, just because it happened today. So I think our street sweepers do a great job. I just want them to do a little bit more of it in those berry dropping seasons.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Harris.
I'd like to second it, particularly because the director pointed out that it would also include the footpath part, because in reality, quite often the footpath part is more important than the road, because very few cars trip over berries, but it's the people on the footpath that do. So I'm very happy to support the second part becoming part of the full amendment.
Thank you. Any further debate on the amendment? Councillor Backer can
I
speak
can
to it.
debate on the amendment. Yeah, look, I mean, I am supportive in principle, but I'll tell you why I didn't support it just in that there. When we're talking about service levels and service levels on the fly, which we're kind of doing, if you have a street of half berries and half not, you could end up doing the street twice. If you do it during the berry season, you've got a different kind of tree in between, and then you're doing something service level for that. And then you've got seeds somewhere else and all that kind of thing. So I'm actually interested in the service levels across the whole city with all our footpaths and having a look at that, because we haven't really had a chance to investigate our service levels, interrogate them and see what we're delivering in totality. This is a nice sort of thing to do on the fly, but I think I'd rather put the 90,000 to the Green Tunnels program, have some of that service level associated with it anyway, and actually with our strategic planning, investigate our service levels, because footpaths are a big issue, I agree, across our whole city. It's not just related to seeds, it's also berries, seeds, lifting pavers, appropriate street trees, that kind of thing. So I won't be supporting this amendment, but I just thought I'd make that comment.
Okay, thank you. Any further debate on the amendment? There being none, and there's no summing up, I now put the amendment to the vote. All those in favour? Against? It is carried. Okay, now becomes part of the motion. Any further debate on the motion? If not, back to you, Councillor Barnett, if you should sum up.
No, I think there are very good points being made.
Thank you. That concludes the debate. All those in favour? Against? Is carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, the next item, 10.5, is a Green Tunnel Street Tree Strategy. Update number 2 is requested. But before I do, I'd just like to recognise Councillor Jamieson and Councillor Basham, who've joined us, along with the Port Adelaide Enfield contingent. I'm just doing the rough maths. I think, and sorry, we have another. Yes, they were welcomed because they were here on time, Councillor, but pointing out that you were late, but that's okay. You're very welcome to listen in, and you're also welcome to leave at any time. We won't take any offence. So as much as you can soak up and want, you're more than welcome. And thank you for your interest. The Green Tunnel Street Tree Strategy Update number 2, as I said, as requested, is on recommendations on page 53 and 54. The CEO is pointing out an update on the screen. You can see there with the year corrected to 2019-20, and it's a multi-part recommendation. I'm not meaning to lead debate. I could take a suggestion to suspend meeting procedures, but it's an extensive report. You've all read it. I'm going to ask if someone is happy to move the motion as it is. Ask again if there's a mover.
Well, I'll move it for debate, because then I think if people have any issues over the amount of funding or whatever, there's opportunity for amendments to be moved. Generally, I'm in favour of our Green Street Tree Strategy. We've certainly got a long way to go. We have to make a start somewhere. And as I said in a note to all of you in the leadership team, how much and all the rest of it, I think, debate for our budget debate now, strategic planning coming up soon. So I'll be interested in what else has been said.
Okay, thank you. Somebody have to second it in its current form.
I'll stick my hand up to get it on the floor.
Seconded by Councillor Backer. Do you wish to speak to it?
Yeah, look, I mean, I would anticipate there might be some changes along the way. I'm just concerned about some of the numbers again because there's nothing already in our long-term financial plan for some of these things. We do have to start somewhere. But again, with the challenges, we're talking over the next 30 years, we're just about to go into a new phase of the planning reforms, which is focusing on infill development. And I don't really see many protections for street trees. I see an increase in double driveways, which we have no control about. And there's a chance that a lot of our streets are going to be impacted from decisions by private certifiers. So I see a huge investment with not a lot of return. I don't see any guarantees on return. So I'm just a bit unsure with this kind of detail. I guess if this extra investment is worthy, unless we've got those guarantees of those trees being there for the next 30 years.
Thank you. Debate. Councillor Harris, 4 questions.
Almost similar to what was just raised then, that our picture of building a green tunnel is, to me, 100% good. And it should be, as I put up a thing in the next budget, it should be like a circular thing. It should be green on the bottom as well as on the top, so some of the bigger streets putting lawns down. But put that to one side until the other bit comes. I think it's a very good idea. I knew it was going to cost a lot of money, and the ultimate thing is how it happens. We got to start somewhere, 50 streets and all that sort of stuff. I do believe it, in our last discussion, as I said, and others said similar, that there might be streets that just will be impossible because of size, because of power lines, because of gas lines, because of telephone lines, because of line, all these people that put lines in places. And so some of it will not be big and covered up, it will be opened up. So that's okay. I do get worried about the money, but somewhere we've got to do it. But the big fear comes of taking this, which I think is the right step, is if we get, and I'll just say 2nd Avenue, because I know of no one in 2nd Avenue with this problem, in fact I do, so I'll say 3rd Avenue, we get down there, we plant some magnificent tree to do the right thing, and when that happens, someone will come, because that will be the main streets they want to live in, because it has all these beautiful green tunnels, and then they'll build a 2-storey house on a block of land and say, well, I love all this green tunnel, but just take the one out in front of my house out. And the thing is, and I need more other people to help me this than myself, I believe we're not making any protection against that. That's right, isn't it? Yeah. So give your kids, a decent car to play in the backyard with, but I'm going to take the steering wheel back off you tomorrow morning. So I'm still going to support it, going to support it because I think we're down that right track. But it's a real big problem of you go and you see something built, whether I like it or not is irrelevant, but then we want to put an extra curve here and we want to take out a tree. After all the work that has gone in, work how people put in, the money we've paid for it and the beauty of it. And right now it seems, and I don't think it's going to change, and that's going to be my last bit, that I see a fear because you go down Regency Road, you go down South Road, you go up at Glen Osmond, you go right down Port Road, and we have a government, so I don't think they're going to change anything in the planning law. They've got no hesitation in chopping decent, bloody, beautiful gum trees out left, right and centre. So I don't see them changing the rules, so I have a fear of this that I'm going to support, that we'll put some beautiful trees down the street, make the street very valuable because it's so good, and then some yabby will come and move in and say, I want that one cut down so I can put my driveway, grow another 3-foot tree. Support the motion, please.
Thank you. Councillor Brew.
Thank you. Look, I support the the motion on the paper. Thank you for bringing it to us because it's been a long debated issue. I've just got a question of process more than anything else, and I've said this before in meetings, I'm going to say it again tonight. Tonight is committing us to $9.5 million over 30 years. So we're being asked to make a $9.5 million decision. But then if you reread the recommendation, it says consider allocating, which means we're actually not making a decision at all. So we're making a policy decision, but not a financial decision. So come, on the 25th of June this year, when we're approving our business plan and our budget for next year, we might say, well, we want to do this over here. We've got Broadview, we've got this, we've got that. We won't do this. And so I'm trying to reconcile how we can make a, in principle, policy decision now without backing it up with a financial decision. So while on first blush it looks like we're committing $9.5 million, we're really not. So my question is, how do we reconcile a policy decision we're making tonight and an intent, but not making a financial decision to back it up until such time we approve a business plan? And at that time, we might not choose this, in which case we would almost have to rescind this as a policy decision if we don't fund it in next year's budget or in the long-term financial plan.
Is that a question?
It is a question.
Okay, because I asked this question in a way, so I'll have a go and then I'll flick to the staff. The recommendations before us commit us to an objective, not a policy. So part 2 is agree in principle the objective to achieve a green tunnel strategy in all streets. So it's not a policy, it's an objective. Parts 3 and 4 give us the option to consider the allocation, whether it be nil dollars or anything above nil, each and every year as part of our budget allocations. That's my understanding from response from the staff today, like we have many discretionary projects every year. But it would need to appear in the long-term financial plan as a probable, but the decision would be ours each and every year. Is that correct, Director?
Through the Chair, that's absolutely correct. It's still subject to the annual budget process. It's an allocation in a long-term financial year for us to actually weigh up what is our sustainability of the long-term plan.
We maintain control.
We maintain control. Elected members maintain control during budget deliberation.
30 budgets.
So does that answer your question?
Well, I think the words are a bit cute, objective policy. We're kind of committing to this as a strategy, use another word, strategy, policy, objective. They're all kind of the same thing, which is an intent, dare I say, to do something. So we're saying we want to do it, but we haven't got the money to do it yet because we can't make the financial decision until June. So look, I'll support the motion. I just think that there's a number of them. I think a number of us have expressed this issue over the last 24 hours. There's a number of motions in the papers tonight that commit us to funds, and individually they look fine. It's $144,000. It's not a lot, but then you start adding them up. And I think some have added them up, and they sort of start adding up quite quickly. So when you're looking at them individually, it's not so bad. In totality, we're potentially committing to objectives or intents later on, but we're doing them individually, and that just doesn't sit well with me. But anyway, look, I'm happy to let it go, but I've raised this before at meetings and I've just felt I needed to raise it tonight. A simpler question is that point 3 does say Council considers allocating 144.
That's my question.
The Council considers allocating 144, currently 54 allocated to green tunnels plus 90,000 currently allocated to White Centre program in the 2021 annual budget. So
to the 19th, to the 29th.
In our papers it says 2021. So
the start of this item, I pointed it out. There was a change. Yeah, sorry. It was in yellow. Just look for the yellow, and it wasn't there.
No, sorry, I must have missed that. So okay, right. So wouldn't that normally be done as part of the budget review process?
Director?
Yep. Through the Chair, during the budget review process, we don't normally introduce any new item. So we have there's the process that is each director needs to actually prepare a report to council if there's any significant budget adjustment from one project to the next. That's why this is.
Sorry.
It will be adjusted in the third quarter budget review.
Yeah. So just to expand on the question, though, Director, that the 54 is already allocated to this strategy intent ideal. The 90,000 has been held up because we've asked for no more white cedar eradication. Isn't that the issue?
Yep.
So it's sitting there waiting for a purpose.
Correct. Through the Chair, the 90,000 is already in the budget. So we have 30,000 is already in the budget.
Sorry, the Councillor's question is a good one.
Yeah.
So we haven't allocated anything else. Does part 3 of this, by virtue of us voting for this or not, thereby allocate that 90,000 to the Green Tunnel strategy?
if this gets up. Okay, so
Which I think we did 5 minutes ago in the previous motion.
I was about to ask that. I think it's redundant.
$90,000. We allocated $90,000 less than the cost of sweeping. So I asked if we take it in parts, if we can't amend this, because I won't support point 3 because it's not accurate. Thanks to our motion 10 minutes ago.
Who moved that change?
I don't know. Someone.
Just ask the question, Marky. Sorry, you finished?
Sorry, you
Well, can I just ask a question? Can I just foreshadow somebody maybe make an amendment to that? Because, as I said, it's not accurate. But that being said, have we not already, isn't this repetitious? We've already done it. Yeah, we've done this one before. Yes, we've done it because we've already actually made that decision for the $90,000. And it should therefore appear
a better way. Councillor. So, CEO, perhaps a question to you and the team. Having dealt with this previously, do we need part 3?
I would have thought it's redundant.
Yeah. So it could be removed.
Yes.
And I'm sure that was your suggestion for an amendment, Councillor Group. I'll now seek the indulgence of the mover, Councillor Barnett. Are you happy to remove part 3?
Yes.
And Councillor De Backer, are you happy to remove part 3? Now seek leave of the meeting to remove part 3. All those in favour? Against this carried now, but not becomes part of the motion. Thank you, Councillor, for raising that issue. Anything further, Councillor Group?
Oh, that's it, thanks.
Councillor Rip.
I was just going back.
Okay, yeah. Just to speak from the chair briefly inside my 5 minutes, I'm going to keep an eye on the time, CEO. This is a rare job for you to be.
It's bouncing all over the screen.
This is an issue that's been raised by us over several years. It's been raised by residents with me ever since I ran for office. The streets that have beautiful trees talk about how they block the street lights. But every other street that's got terrible trees begs me to say, why can't I have trees like those other beautiful streets? What's wrong with you that you can't plant nice trees in my street? And the reason we haven't done that is because we've had lots and lots of history about the tree species being nominated in the Street Tree Manual, the 21st Century Street Tree Manual, or whatever it has been called. We've never seriously questioned its intent. We have drawn that to a head saying we really want to look at its intent, and we've dumbed it down to say, people like really leafy streets, give us trees that do it. The staff have gone away and done exactly what we've asked for in terms of analysing it, and come back and given us data which I found a bit hard to digest, but driving around, I'd have to agree, we have a number of streets that aren't there yet, and more importantly, a number of streets that will never get to a green tunnel with the current species that's been planted. Now, we have to make a decision as a council whether we allow that to continue or whether we start a process of change. Now, we've asked the staff to plant larger trees rather than smaller trees. Larger trees cost more money. You can see all the unit costs in there. They're all there for us to have a look at. You can judge the impact of those and the speed with which they grow. We can change that, but we have encouraged them to plant larger trees. But when you've got a mass tree planting program, the numbers add up really, really quickly, and you can see what's happened here. So the staff have clearly had that discussion themselves. They've added it up and said, oh my goodness, 130 streets to be upgraded, an average of 80 trees per street is an awful lot of money. How could we break this down into a digestible form? And I think they've done exactly what we would do if we had this discussion as elected members. You have to come to a landing somewhere other than doing nothing, which of course is an easy option. So the option they've come at is to say, you've already got an allocation, add the white cedar allocation, what tolerance is there to go beyond that that's reasonable, and maybe target the worst streets first. And even then, it's 30 years to get 50 streets to have the right species, but not actually achieve green tunnel because, of course, the last street to be planted will be 29 years away. So even if we adopt this as an intent and a consideration of a budget, even if we say, look, over the longer term, yes, but the first year we might not be able to do it because we can't actually fund it this year and maybe not fully next year, but lock it in for the out years, it's still going to take an awful lot of time to get those 50 streets sorted. Now, so the alternative is we do nothing. And some of the arguments put so far, well, what if people cut them down? So that's not planting trees because someone might cut them down. Well, I think that's a bit of a defeatist attitude, and that could happen with any tree today. It could happen in any of the streets with lovely trees today, and generally it doesn't happen. When they do, we charge them a lot of money. So some people change their mind because it now costs $15,000 to cut down a mature tree. What protections have we got from infill and people wanting double driveways? Little, but we have some in the form that not much of that happens in most of our side streets. We lose about 50 houses a year, and of those, about half are rebuilt as houses, and about 25, therefore, maybe have an extra driveway. It's a small number in the context of 10,000 properties throughout the city. I think it's a good reason to not have a program of some sort to get on with the job. So I think it's important we do something. I think the intent is good. I think the amount is a sensible compromise. It's a big issue, and I really want to get a start and get this into a budget context. So I urge people to support it, to get it to the next stage where we can argue about how much this year, next year, going forward. Thank you. How to go? Oh, I've got another minute to talk. No, I won't. Councillor Ripp.
Look, I'm happy to support this, and I'm happy that it is. Obviously, we're going to consider this as part of our of the budget process, and we're not totally locking it in. But I hear the other point of view that there is a perception that people in the community will think that you are then committing to that straight away, but we're not. We're going to consider that in the budget process. But I think at least we've got a strategy, and at least I feel more comfortable now that when we come to a budget and we've got a figure of we want to do spend X, Y, Z on tree planting or maintenance, we actually know what it's going to, and it's actually linking to a strategy. So I think that's been the problem in past budgets, where we might have said, oh, okay, we want to plant more trees, okay, we'll allocate $90,000 to plant trees, but we hadn't at that point gone out and done a full audit of all of our street trees in the City of Prospect to see, where are there gaps, and not just gaps for new planting, where are there gaps for existing maintenance of trees? And I've never felt comfortable in my, obviously I've only been here on council for a year and a half, but I've never felt comfortable. Right, it's all right.
I think that was my minute.
Yeah, no, I'll take the extra minute. No. But I've never felt comfortable when I've been asked that by a resident, and I've had to say, well, look, we don't know, because there isn't we don't have a clear green tunnel strategy of why is it 90,000, why is it 90, why do we need 10 new trees, why not? We haven't really had an answer about that figure. We've just sort of been plucking figures out going, oh, it might be nice to put 10 trees here or 10 there, but there's no clear strategy, whereas I think we'll be able to answer some of these resident questions more clearly now, and I think it's really important, so I encourage people to support it.
Any further debate? Nothing. Case, Councillor Barnett, do you wish to sum up?
Well, I think apart from all the excellent points made, there is additional points here. We're not just planting lovely green trees and greening our city. It's also, stopping or helping to prevent the heat sink. And part of our ERA, our Eastern Region Councils, looking at that. It's also a health issue too. If we can get more people out walking under shady streets, if we can get more people being in shade and perhaps preventing skin cancer, I think that it's much wider societal matter as well. So I encourage everybody to support it as it is.
Thank you. That concludes debate. And I remind members that we have we have a new part 3, which is part 4. What was part 3 is no longer in the series of recommendations. There was a request to take it in parts before that change. I won't take it in parts. I'll take it as a whole. Debate's concluded. All those in favour? Against? It is carried unanimously. Thank you. Thanks for the discussion. Staff have taken a lot of notes. I look forward to the discussion during debate. Speaking of which, draft Vine Plaza concept plan, recommendations on page 80. This is already in the budget, right? Do I have someone who wishes to move the recommendation as it is? Councillor Root, wish to speak to it?
I'll reserve my right for now, just want to get on the table for...
A seconder? Barnett, wish to speak to it?
This has come to various sort of workshops, and so it's crystallising even further now that we've reached this point. Again, whatever we want to do in terms of other, say, 2 or other further stages will be a budget discussion debate. So we're endorsing the plan for design development and delivery in stages. So we've got one this financial year and then in the next financial year. So just encourage people to vote for it. It's more or less, we've got the crown and the jewel now here. We've got the dog's breakfast next door to it in Pine Tree Plaza. Again, we need, more work there that it can add to vitality of our area and also, can have more multiple activities and community events and even events that aren't even organised, they just happen.
Thank you. Any further debate?
Question is, the recommendation point 2, the last line. Question comes because stage 1 is there simple. Stage 2, 220, 221, so that's the budget next month or whenever. When it says including landscaping and lighting next financial year, does that mean next financial year from 2021 or next financial year from now? See that last?
I assume it's now, but I've just asked the director to clarify.
Through the Chair, sorry for the confusion. Yes, it's next financial year as in 2021.
Right. And of course I should add subject to us approving the budget for it. So yeah, it's our budget. So does that answer your question, Councillor?
Yeah, because it looked like it's separate.
Any further debate? Councillor De Backer.
Yeah, look, it'll probably come as no surprise. I'm not really supportive of this particular project. I think Pine Street Plaza is fine just the way it is. And this is this gold-plated taps thing that we seem to keep going on about. I think we've got a brilliant building and we've got an outdoor space with mature trees and ample seating. It's not perfect, but it's great. And what other projects could we do with $700,000? Could we renew the Broadview community space? Could we spend some more money in the east? And I just think it's a huge amount of money. There's not one trader that I've spoken to who said, oh, we really need Pine Street Plaza developed. So I would challenge you to go out and speak to your community. There's no consultation other than what I can see with a click, and I could be corrected, but I've had no one tapping me in the shoulder and say we desperately need Pine Street Plaza done. If those of you remember, we did the farmers markets probably a couple of years ago. Didn't work. It's an awkward place. The parking's tight. The parking demands are higher. There's plenty of other places in that we activate spaces. We've got apartment blocks going up next to Barker Gardens. There's opportunities to spend money there, maybe at a playground, something like that. So I'm not saying don't spend money, but I've had no traders saying spend $700,000 on this spot. And I don't know where I know where it's coming from, and I know it's finishing off this project, but we've already spent $21 million or whatever it is, and I just think it would be nice. 19 million? Okay. 18. My apologies.
Including all fees.
Okay, all right. But having a couple of trees out the front, well, that was the only thing that I would have liked to have seen in the initial finished building, which hasn't happened yet. And in this plan, we've got a jacaranda bang in front of our $50,000 sign that says pay empty on it. So I'm not supportive of this at all because I haven't had any demand from the community and I don't see any consultation with the community. So I won't be supporting the motion.
Any further debate? Councillor Wynne.
Question. Did we do any consultation?
Yes. It's in the report, but
Yeah,
CEO,
correct through you to the you, Nathan.
Through the Chair.
I thought it might have been him.
Through the Chair, there was no general community engagement. We did engage Chibo, who was a direct stakeholder as part of the consultation phase. That's it.
anything further, Councillor Wynne?
No, sorry.
Councillor.
So if we vote against this, the $278,000 that's in the 1920 budget would be money we can use elsewhere. Is that correct?
I have asked this question. No. unless we rescind that decision. So we've already made a decision to do this.
So we've got to go over that stage.
Well, unless we rescind that decision. That's not before us. What that decision was dependent upon a concept plan being approved, which is what the staff have brought to us, but this council's already made the decision to do it. So I can undo that decision, but that's not what's before us tonight. Does that answer the question?
It does. So if we vote this down, we then have to rescind the decision some other time.
Reduce the scope of the project.
The options are before us. What the staff will be left with is the decision to do something, but no agreement about what to do. The elected members would need to resolve that dilemma one way or another, either approve a different concept plan or rescind the decision to do anything at all. They're the options. But I just reinforce the decision to do something has already been made by this council, and this is merely about directing the staff. Anything further, Councillor Pearce? You just asked a question, you haven't debated it. Yeah, clarification. Speak from the chair just to add further clarity. When this project was conceived, we had a schema that wrapped itself right around the back of the town hall and the Irish Harp Room, and we just couldn't afford it. So we reduced it to this building that you see now, and even that cost us 20% more than we had it budgeted for. And we're through all that, but we did make a decision to extend the budget to pick up some things which we thought were unfinished business. The curtains in the town hall being one, the plaza being one of the others, making sure the footpath tied in with the Village Heart treatment being another, up to at least the front door. What goes beyond will have to wait, of course, for next door to go on. So I thought that was a sensible decision to try and wrap up the loose ends so that we could finish this area and move on to our next project without having to come back at year 2 or 3 or 4 and try and find an excuse to come back and spend money here, honouring the original intent that this should be resolved in totality. And let's take elected members back a little bit further. In 2010, we had some funding to upgrade the street into what we now call the Village Heart. There was a component of that which was to do Vine Street Plaza, about $500,000 as a grant. Now, we actually turned that grant away at the time, saying that component, sorry, I don't think it was that much, or it might have been $250,000, because we said we're not ready. We're not ready because we're not sure what we're going to do with the town hall. So we'll wait for that to happen, and then we'll decide what to do with the plaza. Well, that's exactly the point we're at. I'm not sure we'll be any more ready to work out what needs to happen next door. So I support us getting on with it. I'm not sure what the total budget will be. There's been a discussion amongst the staff about doing this directly under direct supervision rather than drawing it up completely and having it tendered. So I'm sure that there's savings that can be found. And it will be subject to our budget direction in the upcoming discussions about whether we want to spend any more than just the $270,000 that's currently allocated. We have had complaints about the space for a number of times. The market has always complained about not being able to fit 3x3 metre marquees in the space very easily. We've had that complaint from the farmers market and from the Pleg market, and we agreed that that should be part of the scope to tidy it up. We've also had interest in the basement of the Irish Harp Room being leased out, but we know there are issues about getting in and out of it, and we thought we could make that better and actually liven up the space. We've also had the owner to the south not have a great deal of vision about what can happen in that property, and we know the power of us spending money in the public realm and how that then opens people's eyes up to the potential of their own properties. That's exactly what happened in Village Heart. Not many people had imagination before we did all that work. As soon as we finished it, we had 7 properties spontaneously improve their properties and then expand their outdoor dining as well as a result of us doing the work that they would never have thought of doing before. So I see it as the last link in what needs to be done to make this place really work. The outdoor spaces out there are as important to the programming of what happens inside this space. It's a really important bit of unfinished business we need to tidy up. So the concept plan is very sensible. I'm sure we can find some savings, and I think we can get the levels to be even better for activating the basement, which can bring in some rental income, which if we get that right, will help pay for the work itself over time. So if you ever think about that as a revenue source that we currently can't activate, that is what this project can unleash. So that's where I think it should be. I urge you to support the motion. Any further debate? A few of you asked questions but haven't actually debated the item if you still wish to.
I do, yeah, just a question. So can I just to be 100% correct, so clarify, so we've, in this budget we've committed to this financial year $217,000 and we're anticipating the total project cost for this concept design to be $750,000, is that correct?
Director?
Through the chair.
There's $235,000 remaining this financial year to undertake the project, and the estimated total project cost is $694,000.
That's if we do everything. That's so, Councillor, anything?
Yeah, and a further question, obviously with the director's earlier answer a couple of questions ago, just to seek clarification. So in terms of this concept design, currently we've only consulted with Chibo. Is there any appetite that we actually consult wider with the community on this other than one business? I can just seek some clarification on that. I just want to,
Yeah, thank you. Can I add to that question? I thought we consulted the property owner that owns the Chibo tenancy. Can you answer both of those? Water process, and did we consult the property? I'm sure we invited them. I believe that's correct. Yeah, Sorry, I've got a yes here.
Sorry, through the chair, if I may, it was possibly prior to the project essentially being taken over by the infrastructure department. There are a lot of discussions around that did include the owner of the building next door, which has got multiple tenancies associated with it. And as part of the overall CLIP project, there was broad consultation, not specifically on a concept plan, but around the site, the design, what was needed in the area. And certainly I can recall some positive feedback around the idea of upgrading the plaza. It wasn't specifically asked in terms of concept because the concept hadn't been developed at that time.
Okay, thank you. And the other part of the question, is there a view to consulting more broadly with others?
Through the chair, as you can tell by this agenda, sometimes we do consult with residents, but for example, Collinswood Shopping Precinct concept plans, we haven't consulted with the broader community that plan. Council's endorsed that, similar to this one. Other opportunities where we can consult, we do, but in this case, we didn't feel it was warranted.
Thank you. So there's the answers to your questions. Yeah. Anything further?
you have to help an answer.
Martin's question. I'm still opposed to it, and I thank David for all those things you said because they sunk in. But I've been here, as you know, Saturdays I come down with Sophie, and other days you come through and it's pretty crowded, middle of summer, not winter. So the thing that I was originally opposed to is the building we're sitting in, mainly because the tram barn I didn't believe should have been sold in our property. But in life sometimes you can be wrong, and I fully support the building we're sitting in, and I promote it, quite happy with it. But there's so much else to be done around the place. If we got money, and if it was sitting there and it was dark and dingy and you couldn't see this building or no one was enjoying it, I'd have a bit different view. But right at the moment, at least for another year or two, or we've got some that we can do some things to, but let's try and look after some of the other parts of the city with that money, or save that money for another time to look after it. And I do definitely support what you're doing up at Collinswood, because that's another part that we're trying to grow some. And if this wasn't bouncing on its own, I would have a different view. But at the moment I see mothers and fathers, but particularly mothers with prams during the day and that sort of stuff. I see it full, and not full, but used, quite heavily used. So I'm still going to vote against it. But I do appreciate what you did say, because that final goal is there.
Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Nguyen.
I think if we complete Vine Plaza, it's like icing on the cupcake. Like you want to complete it all, but given that we've got restraints in, budget, maybe not tackle it this year, but could we defer it? I mean, I think Alan's right. Could we move that money around and look at other projects that's more urgent, more demanding? Just given that we've built a beautiful Paint Thea, do we really need to finish that off now, or should we look at, reallocating that to somewhere else and just postpone it? Let's not say we won't do it, but can we postpone it? And I hear what you have said, like it's great, but I just feel like given the financial restraints that we've got, I feel that we don't have to do it in this financial year.
Okay. Further debate? If not, Councillor Rip. If not, Councillor Groot to sum up.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I think just listening to the debate, I think back about 7 years ago when we first started talking about Vine Plaza, and we talked about some really radical things like taking out all the trees and putting fake ones in and having lights and all sorts of things. And so it's been something that we've been talking about for a very, very long period of time. And I think, rightly or wrongly, it created an expectation that we will do something in that space. I note that the money is committed at the moment in this year's budget to do this work, and so we are committing, and this goes back to my earlier statements, we're committing to only this year's stage. Next year's stage will be subject to budget review. So I think what's being proposed for this year's stage is quite reasonable. It will make the amenity better, make the usability better. We'll create another jewel in the crown, to coin a phrase from someone else. We want it to be activated and we'll use as part of the building here. Yesterday I was at a meeting at Henley Beach and sat in Henley Square, and I don't know who's been down at Henley Square in the last year or so. You can see what's been done down there, which is a really well-activated space and well-used space. And I don't think we're going to have quite that same amenity or space next door.
No seagulls.
Well, we can bring seagulls in. That's easy. Or magpies. Maybe you can bring some magpies down, Councillor.
Councillor Groot has the floor.
I apologise for you, but I haven't seen a seagull.
But, sitting in Henley Square, I was thinking, well, this is how we can activate spaces, and they've done it really well down at Henley Square. And we can do something, not the same, but we can do something that's prospect orientated here. I think come budget time, I'll be, as like all of us, we'll be looking very carefully at how we spend money and whether we need to go to that stage 2 or whether stage 1 will actually satisfy us for a period of time. I just think given we've done this, we owe it to the Vine Street Plaza to do that stage 1, and it is in the current budget. So I think difficulty in trying to spend money on a capital project between now and end of June, we would probably come back to the March or April meeting with a proposal to spend that $200,000 on something else, which wouldn't happen by the end of the financial year anyway. So at one degree, we're kind of committed to it. So whether it's a dog's breakfast, whether it's the icing on the cake, or whether we're going for the gold-plated taps or maybe the bronze-plated taps, is up. Everyone's going to make their own determination about that. I think it's worthy of doing. I'll support the motion. I'll support the stage 1. I'm not committing to support stages beyond that until I see what stage 1 looks like, and that'll be subject to our budget process as it normally is in each year. So I do commend the motion. I do also encourage people to support it.
Thank you. That concludes the debate. All those in favour? All those against? It is carried. Thank you. Good discussion. Again, staff taking lots of notes, I'm saying. 10.7, Draft Planning and Design Code Content 2020, recommendations on page 87 to 88. A very long report, a lot of work. Someone happy to move it in its current form? Councillor Barnett, we should speak to it.
Certainly do. So I support the report and the recommendations, and I commend our staff. I know that they've worked very, very diligently and hard over going back to a few years actually, with other work that we've been doing. So I do think I've been looking at what other councils do, and I think that their all submissions seem very well mannered compared to how upset I feel about these proposed changes by the state government. I do would just like some clarification. It says, on the matter of the state has confirmed that the existing 560, 450 and residential policy areas will be located in the suburban neighbourhood zone and within the character areas overlay. Do we have this confirmation in writing from the department or planning commission?
Question, Director.
Through the chair, we absolutely have it in writing from both, and I saw the correspondence this afternoon from the Planning Commission.
Oh, I'm very relieved about that. Thank you for that clarification. So, and I do recognise that we have the President of Prospect Residents Association in the gallery. So, and in talking with the association members and other residents, I really come to the conclusion and ask, do residents understand that they will no longer be notified if their neighbour builds a 2-storey house or increases the number of dwellings on their site? Do they understand about if they build part of their dwelling on a boundary or changes existing land use from residential to non-residential. I mean, I don't think we may have some a better understanding, but I don't think our residents really understand the full implications of how this will change our area, our suburb forever. So I think I'm encouraging residents to get up and get their fighting shoes on, all right? So on behalf of the community, I think and we need to strongly protest the state government on changes, especially our desire to preserve and enhance the character of these suburban streets across our city and to preserve a low-density residential character. And I think that flows through our submission, and I thank our staff on behalf of that. We also need to fight for our community to have sufficient space around buildings to limit visual impact, to provide an attractive outlook and access to light and ventilation. So, so now we know about the Prospect Council's detailed historic and character area statements will be included in the code. But we need to fight for these character statements. I just, you know, what happens, I still don't quite believe that if we don't go in and fight for it, and I'm encouraging Prospect residents to support Prospect Council's report and its submission. I think the Act will change the face of our city forever.
1 minute if you need it, Councillor.
And not in many positive ways from what I've read. Our green open space is still well below par. In many years, as we know, will take our green tunnel strategy to have impact. I think this risks becoming a heat sink with more buildings covering more of what used to be our front and back gardens. With what's proposed, we'll be living closer together. We could start to see more loss of trees with increased subdivision, increased traffic noise, parking congestion and larger building, as well as limited rights of appeal. We're already seeing the character and feel of many of our suburban streets change forever, with buildings that hardly bear the slightest resemblance to our value turn-of-the-century homes. And that's been happening even without further impacting of it by the proposed changes to the code.
Councillor.
All right, so, and I think it's outrageous that there are so many errors in the consultation documents, that people are being asked to put in submissions, including councils, based on incorrect information, as our report points out to us.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Backett, who should speak to it?
Briefly, I'd like to thank Councillor Barnett for her attendance at all the sessions and her liaison with the community on this issue. It is a very difficult one and not very transparent. And look, I'm just really embarrassed that the consultation has been so bad by the state. I think it's a real lost opportunity to make a good system better, and in fact what they're proposing is to take a good system and make it worse. And I think we can all be aware of what's happened at places like Campbelltown, where zoning went too far, and once the damage is done you can't undo it. So I just really want to sort of reiterate the strength of the words that Councillor Barnett was using, and just that and commend this motion and some of the points made by our administration. And again, thanks for all the hard work. Hopefully some of the feedback is taken on board and there's some deferral to the process.
Thank you. Any further debate? That being the case, Councillor Barnett, you wish to sum up your two excellent speeches.
Look, get out there, get onto Prospect Residents Association's website, get your residents to look at that. There are sample letters that they can send in. The information is there in much more detail, and it's, you know, similar vein, except I think in perhaps plainer English than what our reports are done, because they have a different audience perhaps. So please do that, and please encourage your residents to do it. We've only got till Friday, midnight this Friday. So get out there, get active and fight for our city.
Thank you. That concludes the debate. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. Great report. 10.8, the appointment of the Council Assessment Panel CAP member. Recommendations of page 115. It requires some nominations. We'll ask to suspend meeting procedures to enable us to discuss those nominations briefly. So seek your indulgence to do so until, well, 5 minutes, till 8:50. All those in favour? Against? Is carried. Coming straight to the chase. Robin, you're saying you were interested. Is that still the case?
Yes, happy to do it.
Okay. Do you have any other nominations for the position of the member of the CAP, elected member position? Been the case. You're in the barrel there, Robin. We have an optional position. Well, I didn't say gun, but I thought I'd just back it off a bit. Cannon. We have an optional position for a deputy member, which can fill in automatically for Councillor Pearce should you endorse this nomination. We don't have to have that, but we've had it on our system for a little while. Does somebody wish to be nominated for the deputy position?
Can I ask a question before nominations called for? If you're the deputy elected member, are you subject to the same constraints as a member during the normal course of events?
Good question, Director.
Through the chair, the safest approach would be to say yes, given that you may not know that you'll be called into the meeting when that planning application comes forward.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody interested in being the deputy member? I think that was a really good question. Okay, I'll put us back into formal meeting procedures. And I assume then someone wishes to move parts 1 and part 2, but not part 3. Do I have somebody who wishes to do so with Councillor Pearce's name in part 3? Moved by Councillor Groot.
Oh, that's all right. You know, you get the hand.
Yeah.
Get the hand wipe at Fiji.
Yeah, you're right. You won, you lost. Okay, so Councillor Groot, you wish to speak to it?
Congratulations, Councillor Pearce. I'm sure you'll do a wonderful job.
Thank you. You wish to second that, Councillor?
I don't like second, but okay. I'll second it. And congratulations, Councillor.
Not there yet, you know.
Sorry, Councillor, I didn't see your hand.
Go down, to the...
Well, I'll get to the next one.
Any further debate? That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against? So let's do that again.
That's all the thanks you get for being on the thing for 4.5 years.
No motion to thank anybody, fortunately for you, Councillor, but thank you. I'll take that vote again. It wasn't clear. All those in favour? Against? Still wasn't clear. See, when you vote, I've got to be able to see your hand go up when I ask for it in favour or against. So I'm going to take the vote again. All those in favour? Against? Unanimous. Beauty. Fantastic. Very good. Thank you.
Thank
I'll be
you.
very clear, otherwise I get a tap on the shoulder afterwards from our good governance staff. Thank you. Congratulations, Councillor Pearce, and thank you very much, Councillor De Backer. It is remiss that doesn't talk about your length of service on there, but it has been a very long time. So please stay back afterwards and thank Councillor De Backer for doing that. It is a tough gig because you can't talk to the community about any of those projects when you're the rep. Next item, 10.9, second budget review. 2019-2020, recommendations on page 120. Does anybody wish to move it in its current form?
So moved.
I'll move it.
Councillor Barnett, thank you very much. Do you wish to speak to it?
Just thank the staff again. They diligently put these reports up to us and work it slow to put our hands up. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Happy to second it, Councillor?
Happy to second it. Just a brief question, page 125, section 6, finance and resource implications. There's just a second paragraph there that says a net borrowing position means that council does not have sufficient funds within the individual year to fund its budget. So I'm sure I know that, but can you just provide an explanation of that paragraph?
Sure, Director.
Through the chair, that is purely for the recognition of the Johns Road, sales of Johns Road income.
So this is a timing issue on cash. Right, okay.
Thank you. Any further, Councillor?
No, that's
That's your speech?
my contribution.
Okay, thank you. Any further debate? Just from the chair, it'd be remiss of me to let this moment go past. We've had a little touch on it before, but there is $124,000 we've received from the LGA due to their 8-year campaign to get SA Power Networks to be honest about how they charge us for street lighting. Most of our community would have a clue that the street lighting is paid for by their council rates, let alone the complex nature of it, which means that we pay for the electricity to the fitting. Most of you think, yeah, well, okay, sure. We pay for the fitting, we pay for the bracket for the fitting, we pay for the fitting to be installed, we pay for maintenance on the fitting, and believe it or not, we have been paying for depreciation on the Stobie pole that holds the bracket and the fitting up. We had to take this case to the National Energy Regulator to fight our way. It took 18 months just to go through their process, and they did agree with us that it was about time that SA Power Networks realised that they had written off or fully depreciated their Stobie poles about 10 years ago. So no need to charge any more. LGA won a number of aspects of the debate, won $16 million all up, and so our share of that is 124. They also won the right to have the rates reviewed for the following 5-year period, so they're considerably better, and also to have rates going forward for LED fittings energised and supplied and installed at a much, much more attractive rate than the first councils who chose to go it alone directly to SA Power Networks and did what I thought was a pretty ordinary deal with them at the time. And they are now being offered, because the LGA, we're a one big happy family, LGA's even offered to go to those councils and help them renegotiate their dud deal to the new deal, which I think's pretty good of them. So CEO's offered to bring back to us what that money could be used for, and I look forward to seeing what his lateral thinking brings us. You'll obviously have your own thoughts, but at this stage, it's recognised that there's an equal amount allocated to a project that is to come to us, I think, CEO, in March or April? In the April council meeting. Okay. Other than that, I commend the budget review to you because it improves our position in an operating aspect. Any further debate? Being none, Councillor Barnett, seeing you need to sum up. That concludes debate. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. 10.10, the ALGA National General Assembly 2020 call for motions. Councillor Barnett, happy to move it?
Yes, very happy to move this. I've been banging on about this for a while, and with the us being all councils around Australia having to do the Australia Day holiday, that sort of sparked me up a bit more. So I thought, well, why not put this up? And so we have it there before us. As I've pointed out before, ever since councils voluntarily took up having citizenship ceremonies in the 1950s, it's always been a cost to the council ratepayer. Ceremonies were transferred from courts to local government after immigration in the early 1950s. As it thought, ceremonies in court receive little public and media attention. Currently there's no funding of research around Australia. It's not even a grant that councils could apply for. And councils under the code, the ceremonies code, cannot get funding or in-kind contributions from a sponsor. And there are now more costs associated with councils being forced to hold out on the 26th January citizenship ceremony with holiday loadings on wages and things that's been explained to us. So I think, so again, it's all one of these big cost-shifting exercises. The federal and the state governments put up these laws and then expect us and our residents to pay for them. We love having them, no doubt about that, no problem there. But it's just the mechanism, I think, that if they want them, and particularly if they want to put voice changes onto us, then they should come to the party somewhere, even if there was a grant for, us smaller councils and rural councils, perhaps. So that's why I encourage everybody to support this.
Thank you. Does it have a second? Councillor Pearce.
Yes, I'm happy to second it, and I think it's been covered, so I've got nothing more to add.
Further debate.
I'll just ask a question. How much does the federal government provide in funding to us at the moment through the State Grant Commission? The state provides none of it. It all comes from the federal government. What is that amount?
Just under 600,000.
Just under $600,000. Is that every year?
That is for grant, through the Chambers for Grants Commission.
Is that every year?
Yes, yes.
Every year, okay. Thank you. Any further debate? No, being the case, Councillor Barnett, just to sum up.
Oh, I would have liked a little bit more enthusiasm, but hopefully this will get up at the National General Assembly. It might hit a chord somewhere with all the smaller councils and smaller rural councils who are struggling. Some consideration.
Thank you. That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. Deputy Mayor's delighted he's coming to Canberra. Item 10.11, election signs corflute regulation submission. The recommendations on page 160. I'm sorry, members, but I'm mindful that we also have not discussed this in any other forum. The due date is soon. I'm going to propose that we suspend meeting procedures until 9:15 to have some discussion on whether these 4 items in item 2 are ones we agree with or not, because we haven't discussed it anywhere else. So with your indulgence, all those in favour of suspending meeting procedures until 9:15, all those against, they're thus suspended. Now, the staff have provided the report. The suggestions have come roughly from complaints we've received and from the LGA's questions. But where do people sit with these 4 suggestions, or any suggestions at all?
And can I just clarify with this? Are we talking about state elections, council elections, the combined works? Because I'm mindful that we don't really have say over or jurisdiction over sort of state and federal elections. I wouldn't assume. I'm assuming this would be more for council elections.
I'll just ask that question, Director.
Mr. Chair, this is referring to all elections.
All elections, all 3 levels.
Interesting. Okay.
That's come from
the LGA submission.
That's come from an LGA motion from a general meeting.
So it is for all 3. All right. Like personally, I think moving the roads. I think A is fine. I just think if we want to talk about cutting red tape and being over-regulated, I just think B is just so onerous. It's not even, and that would just gobble up so much council staff time. I can't see why, personally, why we would look at B. I just think that would be, it will take up, you'll find a lot of staff time taken up on logging where every sign's logged, and you're talking state and federal elections, good luck, because that could, if you're looking at B, I think that would take up a lot of your time. I think personally I don't see any problem with A. C I think would be potential for C, and I'm happy with D, but I just think B, you'd want to be really careful with staff resources and time.
Can I ask what does C mean before I go to other people? What is that?
Oh, yeah. But
Can you explain? Is that saying not on side streets, only on main roads? Is that the intention?
Yeah, can I actually refer that to Manager of Government?
Principal Governance Officer.
Principal Governance Officer. If you,
Okay, sure, thank you.
that has come from the LGA, I presume, that one. But
Yes, that's right.
what's your interpretation?
Would be whether it be council roads or main roads, which I think generally is main roads anyway, on digitized infrastructure. So I'd say that would be what they're implying.
Okay.
It's just a suggestion if council wanted to mould it that way, because we already had the limits around the intersections and all those sorts of things.
Okay.
So they're talking about limits.
But if we're not sure, if we wanted to say something, we should make our response really clear, I'd suggest. Okay.
so,
So hang on, I'll just go through. So Steve, your suggestion was that C may have some legitimacy. What did you mean by that?
Limiting, well, I mean, if you're going to put it particularly, like, it's not, my interpretation was the types of roads, obviously, like your main roads and a few of your main arterials, but my interpretation of the reading into that was it'll be limiting like, what do you call them? Yeah, like laneways and alleyways. But
Not sure.
Yeah.
Open mind. Okay.
yeah,
All right.
open-minded.
I'll
Yeah.
keep moving along with a couple of hands here. No?
My view may not be the same as other people's view around the table. First of all, I'd like to, if you could take, when we do come to the vote, take it in parts.
Yeah.
And I'd be really interested in taking 2 A, B, C and D as parts, if that's possible. So I'll let
Hoping to get the number down from A, B and C and D, but we'll see where we get to. But
sure. Just the concept of taking in parts, I would support. Look, I actually have no problems with corporates. I actually think they're just part of our really interesting political agenda. The point that Councillor Rip just made around point B around registering the location of each sign. The very first year I ran for council, I could only afford 11 corporates, and every week I'd go and take them down and put them on another Stobie pole. It's the only way I could do it. And so just in terms of compliance, regulatory activity and red tape, it just would be a nightmare, I think, for people if they would choose to do that. I actually don't have a problem. I think some of the interstate examples are technically accurate, but having been interstate where there have been elections, they get around it through a whole lot of interesting ways by putting them on garden stakes in people's front yards or on verges or in other ways. So I don't think that's necessarily a helpful comparison. As I said, I have no problems with corporates. Some people choose to do them, some don't. Some people win with them, some people don't. I just don't have an issue. And I don't think we're going to be able to influence a federal politician's desire to grow core food or not. Correct. I think this is not, I'm not saying it's wasting our time, but I'm just thinking we're punching a little bit above our weight in terms of trying to put an implication on federal campaigns.
So this is our response. In a moment it'll be your response. Yep. Which of these would you support being in your response?
The only thing I would support D, but I think I would support D if it said something along the lines of support the use of corporate signs if there's regulation that requires signs to be recycled or reused at the end of use. So I have a pile of corporates in my shed that I may or may not use in the future, or my kids have used to paint, or I've used as a drop sheet when I painted, or whatever it might be. So I just think recycling is one option, reuse is another.
So D, not A or any of the others, just D.
No.
Okay. Yep.
Just
Fine.
not D.
Right,
Isn't it a requirement that you have a recent photo within 12 months anyway? So like, if you have a photo 4 years ago, you can't reuse it.
That's only for council.
No, that's for
That's for your registration. It's got to be recent, but not for your postage.
Some of us don't change.
Yes, you do.
Nick Atkinson didn't age for about 20 years.
And Councillor Barnett, I think, still uses them from the 90s.
well, mine's very simple. I don't have any date. And I don't
That's
have
very
any
clever.
vote.
I learned from that.
No, yeah.
My opinion is I thought it was just the councils, and if it was just the council, I'd see them banned altogether. But if it's for state and federal, we'll have no hope of getting that in. So have to just come back to restricting them perhaps, but even that's, who polices that?
Unfortunately, we have to.
It's
That's the problem. It's a burden on us.
and people put them up in the wrong, they're too high or they're too low and they're falling off, and I prefer none, but.
Okay, all right, thank you. Christine?
Yes, I think it could be possibly part A, and might be part B. Oh my God, that would be onerous. Oh. Over by the time
It's ridiculous.
all the the people regulating it sort of got back to. Part C could have some possibilities. I know it was quite interesting. I went to Geelong for a Friends of the Library National, and apparently there was an election on. The only way that I knew there was an election on was because one person had it on their front garden. Throughout the whole city wouldn't have even known there was an election on. So unless we can drum up better ways to inform people, that's one possibility. Another one is, I think it's happened in the state, did a research on it, to ban corporate signs on public utilities like Stobie poles, reducing visual pollution. I think nobody seems to have mentioned that, and only allow them on private properties. So, there could be something happening there. My main big thing is Part D, because, I'm mindful of many of our councils are reducing single-use plastic, and I think if we're going to continue to use corporate election signs, there should be information provided to candidates about recycling or reusing them. And there are a whole range of things like about using EcoPure biodegradable core flutes, which are manufactured in Australia. They're also known as bioflute. So we can environmentally dispose of them if you're unsuccessful and in 4 years' time you can't come to use your sign again for some reason. And one candidate in the 2019 New South Wales did away with plastic campaign signs and swapped them for waterproof cardboard. It's called Opruga. It's named after the Swedish town where it's manufactured. And so it's a bit more expensive, but it's used extensively in the UK and it's been available in Australia for 2 years.
D, strong support for D.
And that's D. And also, so we make that legislation, and that if you're going to recycle them, but give the candidates the information about where and how you can recycle and how you can be more environmentally friendly. All
right. Sweet.
It doesn't bother me how many they put up, as long as they're up and taken down during the period, and as long as it doesn't fall down and, flying everywhere. The other thing I want to comment is it will be a huge workload for staff. So, to have to register and, policing that will be really hard as well. So I think I'll go D, making sure that it's recyclable when, there's another use, from it. So I say D.
So I can just make one other quick comment. What I was trying to make before is I think it should be a personal choice about people using core flutes, and council should be agnostic about whether they're used or not. Interestingly, there was a by-election in the council very close to us, maybe north and west of this particular one, which was resolved yesterday. The one candidate put up over 1,000 core flutes and got 265 votes versus the person who won, and I don't know how many core flutes they necessarily put up, with 1,800 votes. So my point being that core flutes do not make an election winner. And so if people want to choose to put 1,000 up and lose, good luck to them. If people want to choose to put up 10 and win, that's up to them as well. So I think it should be the choice of the candidate.
Okay, just my 2 cents. Can't get a 2 cent coin. My 5 cents worth. Well, we've still got a 5 cent coin. Just get in quickly. Is I think we've got to be really careful, because whilst restricting the number of signs allowed per candidate sounds easy, somebody has to enforce that. So our officers will go around trying to count up the 200 posters that people are allowed. I mean, because someone will complain saying, I think there's 210. Well, how do you respond to the complainant? By saying,
and the other
so I just think, whilst in theory it might be sensible for equity purposes, I think the burden will fall to us, our officers and our ratepayers and our money, to try and work out how to do it. So it's either an all or nothing thing for me. It's either you have them and you regulate them well. We've got reasonable regulations, and I think a reasonable tolerance of silly stuff that goes on, but we don't go too hard, or you don't have them at all, and you just allow people to put on private property, which you can't restrict. Someone wants to plaster their house with them, and I think some of the levels of government have some rules around that, but what can you do? So I think that only D makes some sense to me, that the materials have got to be recyclable. I did take mine to Plastics Granulating Services down in the fair suburb of Wingfield, the beautiful city of Port Albert Enfield.
You didn't take them all.
The gallery. There's a thumb up. There's a thumb up. There's a thumb up. And they took them, and I hope they did something with them. They didn't seem that enthusiastic, but they took them. So I think D is the only one hearing has some form of support that's reasonable. The other stuff's got either none or a scattergun kind of approach. So
I think that also.
So I'm going to try and draw us back together soon, a bit quicker than we needed to, unless there's further discussion. We'll just hear from a couple of others. Alison, we haven't heard.
Chipped in, but I'm similar D. But I mean, these are the points that we're limited to. But I'd say basically the E, the advocacy of use of core flute alternatives, eco-friendly.
Which is kind of D.
It's kind of, but it does mention core flute. It doesn't talk about. But that's I'm again. I think trying to restrict it is challenging, and I believe in the democratic process. If people could tolerate it. I think you actually get more complaints in between election times on trees and traffic and all the other things that we're actually there to make decisions on. And I think I want to encourage people to stick their hand up. And the more rules and regulations, the less people you get involved.
Yep. Thank you. Just to make life easier, we could change the word in D, Corflute, change it to election signs.
Yeah, I think
it would be easy.
Yeah.
And maybe a couple others that Alan and Steve.
Yeah, just to finish, I was thinking about it, but restricting the amount, but reality, if someone wants to spend their money, so be it. But that's one of a little bit thing. That definitely the next one, registering where you put the signs, like they can be there today, gone tomorrow, and all that. Limiting type of roads, I'm a bit worried because while not coming back again, I've only got 2 main roads, so all the rest are side streets. So
coming back, is that an announcement?
No, because that's what you done to Matthew. You made him finish up that night.
I hadn't heard that one before.
The fourth one of recycling, we should always encourage it. And I wish I had known you got rid of yours, because I've still got yours in my shed, and also the people that run against me. So I might return. I'll give you.
I've seen what he's done with it as well. You're not just.
I've only got one of these, but I got a lot of yours, David, because
you could make a new chicken.
So the D would be my support, but definitely B and C I'd be opposed to, strongly.
Yeah. Okay, yep, thank you.
Look, that's a heartache to follow, I've got to say. But look, I think practically D is going to be the main legitimate one to enforce. The other thing, the difficulty around, even though it's nice in theory around, I've talked about B, but the difficulty about number A is you'll see, I know exactly what will happen in campaigns. You'll see silly buggers occur, and you'll see candidates, they go out there, put up 50 signs. Someone will deliberately cut down 20 of them. That candidate will go out and replace the 20, and then the silly bugger will go out who's causing trouble and put up the other 20 and say, oh, that candidate's got 70 out there. So it not happen because it happens all the time in state and federal campaigns, and I've even seen it happen in my signs, for example, I had about 20 to 30 deliberately cut down and I replaced and found them. The others are in different spots. So not in your backyard, but it will happen. Those silly buggers will occur because you'll have a couple of silly people out there playing those type of games. So I think it'll be too difficult to enforce a reality.
Okay, thank you. I think there's been plenty of discussion, of course, back in a formal session a little bit. Sorry, not just quite yet. So it seems to me no one wishes to move the motion as it's put to us. It does have a little fault in it that says such as. We need to be really definite about what we're advising the LGA. It sounds to me like there's only support for D, and that is if we make it generic, not corporate signs, but election signs. So I'll go back into the session. Here from Councillor Group.
Sorry, can we say recycled or reused?
All.
I did mention that.
Yeah,
I know, but someone could say, well, I don't need to recycle until I don't reuse it, so that's going to be 16 elections away.
Isn't it environmentally...
So be it. And? I'm happy if the view is not to have it, but I just think just recycled is a very blunt instrument.
That quick question.
Sorry, take a question and...
D, define end of use, because if someone wanted to use their corflutes, I've only been involved in 2 council elections, one in West and one here, and I'll be changing mine up. But what does end of use actually mean? If someone wants to reuse their corflutes for 4 elections, is the end of use at the end of their 4th election? Like what does end of use actually mean?
Okay, so here's what I'm going to do, because this is a little bit messy and we need some words. I'm going to call a brief adjournment for 5 minutes while the staff just help us pull this together, because we need to formalise a response. The consultation period finishes, I think, in about 10 or so days. So that's to 9:20. Please be back here at 9:20. We'll get some words together. Thank you.
Good point.
I'll order some new ones. Damage ones out, but I might use 3 years.
Not such as.
It's a great add-on.
Some,
Ada, Sia,
At least they see it and they take interest. Oh, no. Oh, yeah.
Just because it's architecture.
I'll see all the go.
Oh, by my turn. Oh, yeah.
Response that really was.
And I think it's
Oh, actually, we're saying we're saying election all the way through.
that's right. We have,
Thank you.
What's the reason? It's just election all the way. Election time. Just at the head of
the recycling. What is the actual sign at the end of the recycling?
Yeah, but I might.
Election sign?
We could go.
Election sign?
Should be recycled.
Okay, definitely.
So setting up there.
Now we get all food out of the middle
Recyclable or reused at the end of life. Used to be. Reuse the. No, because some people use it for years. Less estate and short the electrical
Keep this out, Australia. Oh, you get caught every time. Yeah.
less estate. No, isn't it? It's just us stating. It's not the state. Oh, it's a state. Our count. Oh, that's the English language. Sorry. Same word. Very annoying. Resolution to state. Our council support. Council support. Relation to the recycle rate. Well, council does not support.
I'm not sure. I'm just trying to think about what the implications of saying we support that. Because they've written just about supporting additional measures to restrict the use of council sites. So that means they're worried about Call us back in the session and let the members.
I wouldn't let him go.
What's a fair point?
Well, it's pretty stronger than that.
There you go.
Contributions are stay away.
I think state's okay. Yeah, it's a bit stronger.
But appreciate that.
Thank you, elected members, for coming back so promptly. We now resume formal session. Does anybody wish to move the recommendation as presented to us on page 160? No. Does anybody wish to remove the alternate resolution or recommendation, which is in front of us there on the screen? Item 1 as per the previous. Item 2, provide a response to the LGA supporting additional measures to restrict the use of election signs with a submission to State Council support for election signs to be recycled or reused at the end of life. Councillor Barnett, happy to move that way?
I was just wanting to add at part 2. I don't know if I have your indulgence.
Sorry.
I thought we discussed and candidates be provided with more information about environmental things.
Are you happy to move it? If not, Councillor Green, have you move it as it is up there?
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Green. You should speak to it. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Harris, wish you to speak to it?
Just very quickly, did take on what the other councillor earlier said, that perhaps we should be encouraging them to teach people how to do it. And I suppose I'm supporting them because when it reused at the end of life, well, if you're dead, you don't want to use it anymore anyway. So I'm seconding it.
Thank you. I think any further debate?
Yeah. Quick question. Oh, sorry.
An amendment?
Take Councillor Ripp first.
Yeah. I'm assuming by the end of point 2 with the change, the end of life means whenever that person chooses to no longer use it. I'm just wanting to check.
Unfortunate.
That would be a standard definition.
Yeah, I think it's related to the sign's life, not the candidate's life.
Oh, well, yes, that's good.
That's how I interpreted it.
So it is whenever they choose to not use them again.
I'll take back my son.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. Let's take the letter going to the LGA and we'll spell it out a bit more clearly. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Rather wordsmith it tonight. Is that all you had, Councillor Barnett?
Yes, my amendment is at the end of part 2. So to be recycled or reused at end of life, and information provided to candidates about recycling and biodegradable core foods.
Options. Biodegradable options. And information be provided to candidates. Okay, thank you. As is customary from this chair, I'll seek indulgence to the move if they wish to incorporate that proposed amendment.
So yes or no, I can't say that.
Can't say any things after yes or no. Preferably to say yes.
I'll say no.
No, it becomes an amendment. Councillor Barnett, you speak further to it.
Well, I just think that it behoves all of us and councils and LGA included to inform. It's all very well saying that you have to have, do recycling and reusing, but it would be very good to have that information provided to candidates.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for the amendment? Councillor McAdoo, do you wish to speak to it? Do we have any further debate on the amendment? Councillor Groot.
Just to explain my no, I think that the amendment is an operational issue. We're voting here on a strategic issue and a policy position rather than the level of operation. I would expect that to have happened anyway, or I would expect the candidates to research that themselves. But I think the LGA, if this did go up at some point in the future, they would do that as a matter of course. So I don't think it adds to the motion. That's why I'm not supportive of it.
Okay, thank you. Further debate? Concludes debate. No summing up on an amendment. All those in favour of the amendment? Those against the amendment? It is lost. Okay, back to the motion. Any further debate on the motion? There being none, Councillor Groot, you wish to sum up?
No.
That concludes debate on the motion. All those in favour? Against, it is carried unanimously. I'm going to place us to write notes for this one. Like you've got a whole page. Thanks, Jeff. Thank you. 10.12, the review and update of existing policy. Recommendations on page 166. Someone happy to move it in its current form?
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor. Where's the deputy mayor? You wish to speak to it? Do you have a seconder?
I'll second it, but I
Councillor Tobacco.
what's the question?
Question, yes.
This is just in relation to the food truck policy that we're reviewing. How many applications have we actually had?
I think it says in there one. But
Through the chair, only one.
Yeah. Yep. Any further questions, Councillor?
Okay.
Wish to debate the motion?
It's fine.
Further debate? Councillor Ripp.
Yeah, look, I just want to thank the staff for taking on board elected members' comments, particularly around council member records management policy. It's a shame that we can't engage with the gallery that are here to find out what they do. But I know with resources it makes it difficult, but I believe we really do need to upgrade our records management software. I can't believe we're at a state that, particularly with elected member emails, that they're not automatically captured under our records management policy. I was shocked when I first was elected here November to realise that, I've got to be responsible. I mean, and I do it out of course anyway because it's how you track resident correspondence, but that all my emails aren't captured under our records management unless it goes in and I specifically specify that it's not, and I find that quite a concern for our practices, particularly if I don't know if how many FOI requests the council administration get generally from the community, but if you're not capturing in records management our automatically emails that we're sending between each other to residents to council staff, how are you going to respond to FOI requests? I don't know. And it will make it quite onerous. So I really think that area really needs to be a focal point for us to improve.
Thank you. I feel compelled to clarify, they're not lost. They're in the email system, but they're not in the documents management system.
Can't recall them, so they really are lost in a way.
Search and find them, but it's just to reassure people they're not completely lost. Is that correct, Director?
Chair, that's correct.
Any further debate? No, to be the case, Councillor Groot, do you wish to sum up?
I support all that's been said.
Concludes debate. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. 10.13, successful grant funding, Broadview Oval, Yanta Tutu Yata Play Space and Charles Kane Reserve, the Pando Yurta redevelopment. Recommendations are page 186 to 187. It's a bit on tonight, eh? Someone happy to move it in its current form?
Can I ask one question first?
Make a brief question.
I'm most happy. I've read where our money's coming from, taken from a road one and other things to do, Broadview Oval one in particular. So my question is, in this budget we're just about finished, have we done the playground in Harvey Street or has that been absorbed into this?
Ratley Reserve, yeah, take the question, Director.
Through the chair, we have money allocated towards the upgrade of the playground at Ratley Reserve, and if council resolves as per this resolution tonight, that playground will get upgraded this financial year.
Wow.
So yes, it's in the budget, and yes, it will happen if this gets up. Is that correct? Okay.
So they're two separate things.
Yes.
Yep.
Did you indicate you're happy to move it, Councillor? If not, I'll go.
Yes, yes.
Would you speak any further to it?
No, actually, it's straightforward. Particularly, I'm more, and I'll be honest, I've more looked at the Broadview Oval than the other one because I didn't have much time to read 8,000 pieces of paper. But I'm happy with the process we're going with the playground going through and this sort of stuff. So I just move it as is in, and hopefully we get where we're going.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder?
Oh, second.
Oh, so it was
Mr. Barnett just snuck in. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor?
I always think it's very straightforward.
Okay, thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Good.
Just going to make the note again. Here we are doing two things. One, reallocating budgets in a paper rather, and not within the budget reallocation process. So just noting that, and also noting my objection to the fact that we're also committing. So I'm just trying to find $508,000 in 2021 when we create an expectation within the community to do this. We also forward commit through grant applications, and we've had that conversation before, which I'm still concerned about. Where we're committing before we're committing to the grant process and the grant obligations before we commit to a budget. I just think we're doing that around the wrong way. So I'll just make that point. I will support it. Makes sense, but I'm just still concerned about some of those process issues.
Further debate?
Yep, I'm obviously happy to support it. Again, it makes sense noting the comments that have been mentioned as well. But yeah, happy to support it overall. It has been, this one has actually been, I believe, for us to consider. It's been to council before and it's been to a workshop, I believe, as well, or maybe not, but I know it's come up before for us. So we have had enough time to look at this, and I know we've sent the staff away to bring back options. Well, we've got the options. I think it's pretty straightforward, but yeah, I'll just leave it there.
Thank you. Further debate? Just from me briefly, this is a result of the embarrassment of applying for grants and getting them. I'm not in total agreement with the report, although I think this is a measured solution to working out how to fund those opportunities, noting that the big one has to wait for our budget decision about matching the 508,000. We may choose not to match it, but that's going to be difficult to say no to. I don't agree with what it says in the report about we shouldn't budget for these things because we never know what we might get. We did exactly that on Maynooth Road. We budgeted for the grant coming in, and when it didn't come in, we wrote the budget down. So there's two ways to do this, and I would prefer that going forward that we have some indication at budget time about what sort of grants we're going to apply for, so the elected members have some idea to either put some contingency aside or to put forward the other 50% actually in the budget in the hope that we get it. If we don't get it, then we've got the spare money. What's happened here is we've got two grants and have no spare money, and now have an obligation to find 800 grand or give the money back. So I don't agree with that aspect of the report, with all respect, CEO and Director, and as shown by behaviour by the same team in another place. But I do think this is a relatively good way of working through how to make best use of those available funds for two very worthy projects that are in our park strategy. So these aren't unworthy, they're not projects we haven't thought of, they've absolutely been thought of, and we've committed to them by strategy and by master plan of Broadview. So hopefully the first bit can get finished this year and the second bit can get supported in the budget, but that's of course subject to discussions at another time. Any further debate? If not, Councillor Harris, wish to sum up?
Yeah, just very quickly, taking particularly what you said at the end, and I was concerned because particularly up here at Broadview we're going to do this, but we still haven't got a master plan, and this fits into the master plan, the playground is, and so hopefully it's not going to put that back further again and all this, so there might be others. So I endorse it. I was hoping Chris was going to get onto the Broadview master plan, and that might have come up in the same time, but it didn't. The other one that I don't know much about is the point 4, which is going to be discussed in the budget. So to me, it's just a considered in this part that we look in the budget. So at the moment, I ask people to endorse it.
Thank you. That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Right, general business, urgent business. Is there any urgent business? No. Reports for information, there are several there. We'll do them all by on block unless they are withdrawn by somebody. Does anybody wish to withdraw item 12.1, the mayoral monthly activity report? No. Does anybody? Sorry, yes. I was just trying to...
Just got in there by the buzzer.
It was just one question. So.
That's okay. Yep. Anybody wish to withdraw item 12.2, the Indy boosting out of hours usage? Councillor Nguyen. Item 12.3, does anybody wish to withdraw the Prospect Innovation Awards? No. Item 12.4, does anybody wish to withdraw the Community Hub Library and Innovation Centre concluding report? No. Anybody wish to withdraw item 12.5, the Intelligent Community Forum Top 7 Communities of 2020 report? No. Anybody wish to withdraw item 12.6, local government domestic violence thing? Alan Harris.
I hand up first. Yeah, he had his hand up first.
First, second.
Winner, loser.
As expressed before, yeah. Winner, loser.
Winner's grimace of rest,
Certainly happy to move on block with no further debate on 12.3, 12.4, 12.5. So moves. That's what I heard first, sorry. Seconded by Councillor Rip. There is no debate. All those in favour? Sorry, taking a vote. All those in favour? All those against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, item 12.1, the mayoral monthly activity report. Councillor Tobacco had a question.
Oh yeah, it was just about the craft brewery. You met someone.
I'm thinking, what question does she have?
That's the one.
Yes. What particular aspect did you want to have a question?
Well, just in regards to the nature of the query, if it's able to be discussed, and it sounds like a very exciting project.
Well, I try and list the developers or business owners who've come to me about specific help from council, and they came. There is a party interested in having a brewery and a retail outlet at the same location along Prospect Road. So I was able to give them some advice about where they might be able to go. I can't give them any licensing advice because we now don't have anything to do with licensing. And they have gone on their merry way to try and talk to agents and other people. So, it could be very good, but it's like any of those other queries. It's their business and they have to make it work. So, it reminded me of one of my election commitments to start a conversation about a pub back in 2006. And so the backer going back to not being thanked for being on the CAP. No one thanked me for achieving every other thing in my election manifesto, but they remind me about why there's no pub. I didn't actually promise a pub, but never mind. This could be close. You happy to move it?
Happy to move it.
Any further debate? On yourself? So, and do I have a seconder? Councillor Harris, wish you...
Thank you.
Any further debate? It concludes debate. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Next item withdrawn was 12.2 by Indy boosting out of hours usage. Councillor Nguyen.
Yeah. Just with regards to that, has there been any promotion or to the community members that these facilities are available now for them to book?
A question, Director?
Through the Chair, the promotion is essentially focused on community groups and programs at this stage rather than broader one-off things. There's been a number of teething issues as outlined in the report report. So we've had to be cautious about the promotion. But obviously we've seen a number of activities, including our first trial 80th birthday, which occurred on the weekend, which whilst wasn't completely seamless, it was a pretty good result. They needed to come back to do some additional cleanup, otherwise they wouldn't have got their bond returned, but it must have been a wild 80th.
So in the future, are we going to continue to have private function bookings like that with?
Through the chair, there's a current community hall hire policy which outlines certain activities that are supported by council. In April of this year, we're bringing that back to council with an updated version for a number of reasons, not least of which this building isn't referenced, whereas the town hall and Irish Harp is. So that gives an opportunity to start talking about this Tukundi Koo space or the rear balcony or other areas for bookings as well. So there's more to come.
Thank you. Somebody happy to move the report? If not, yourself, Councillor Nguyen? You happy to move it? Yep. Do you wish to speak to it any further? And do I have a seconder?
Get heat.
Councillor Groot? Hey, look at that. Look straight at you and said, Councillor Groot, how's that? I've been practicing.
Excellent.
Wish to speak to it? Councillor Pearce, do you wish to speak to the item?
Oh, sorry, I thought I was beaten.
Oh, well, you weren't beaten, just seconding. You
Just lost.
You just made the item.
I lost. Just lost. No, I don't. No.
Is there any further debate? That concludes debate. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. Look forward to the next report. And the next item that was withdrawn was item 12.6, the local government domestic violence initiatives. Recommendations on page 258. A bit of interest here. Councillor Harris, though. Move it as it is, or do you have a question?
Well, because it's only got 0.1, council haven't considered, did it receive and note the report, I will move it because I wouldn't be opposed to it, but I want to speak on it because I'm a bit disappointed in where we've gone with it, and I try and say to the other people, I don't want people to think what's happened in Queensland in the last week or so that makes anything different, because it's just as important as anything else, but it shouldn't make any difference of where we go. I've read the various ones, and I won't quote them because I can't remember them, under the Children's Acts and that, the LGA is going to do something at some stage about something else. All those things seem like a good process that is going to happen, but to me I'm disappointed that I'm sure that there is a certain amount of things we can do. I think Nathan put in parts, shouldn't say that because it might not have been Nathan, but put in part that if we start to look after people, particularly wives and children, but it can be men as well, we start to look after them, our people might not have the appropriate training and that sort of stuff. So I accept that sort of responsibility, and I think that's important. But all this stuff that's happening, it's not happening today and tomorrow. It's been happening for years, and for a long time some of us have been asking for something, particularly, and I'm not educated in the violence of women and children, but I'm knowledgeable enough that perhaps signs around or a way if a person comes. Some of the things in here, the point is you can go onto a website and you can go on the computer and you can register or find an answer out. Well, I'll tell you, if I'm a woman and my old man's about to belt heck out of me, I'm not going to sit down in front of a computer and try and find answers where he can go and look at that same computer. I'm going to walk past a shop, I'm going to walk past a policeman, I'm going to walk past someone and say to someone, can you help me? Or have sign. So I believe following all these things, good, but I think we can do some more, at least a sign. Are you being hurt? Are you got a problem? Speak to someone, give those hints. I just don't think it's enough that we just can do something. I don't think I've got the answers. I know I've got some, but I don't think I've got the answers. And I know sitting on your side of the table there's people with intelligence enough that can find the answers, that it just, you walk to that desk and you've got a little kid there, there's got to be someone you can say, and you go to the toilet, you can lock it, I got a problem, can you walk me through? And then no one else can come behind it. I just don't think we've done enough. So I'm going to move it, and at the end I'll finish it off because we receive and noting. But I want to say that I honestly believe, and I did make an offer with an email with co-councillor, if someone wants to sit down. I've dealt with some of these things, and I'm willing to sit down and try and come up with some answers where we can help. So I'm moving it.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Can I just foreshadow an amendment, so I won't second it?
Seconder? Councillor DeBacker, we should speak to it.
Yeah, I would. Similar to Councillor Harris, I actually had communication with the administration back in November wanting to put forward a motion, and the email that came back said I should put up a budget bid. And I was really disappointed in that, because I've seen us go to all these white ribbon breakfasts, which are great because it's a way to get information and a way to appreciate how it affects our society. But what I haven't seen is any actions within our community. So currently we've got our bespoke community board at the front of our Painty building covered up with a for lease sign or at the front there. We don't seem to have a community notice board anywhere in Painty that I can see. And and I had suggested similar things, maybe posters in the washrooms, which is perhaps a safe, lockable space. And we've currently got advertising on the back of the cubicles, but no information for the community. So I just think we need to, take some common sense and transfer some of this information into actions for a community, because that's what we're here for. Certainly I appreciate some of the actions that we have been doing as within the workforce proper, and that's great work that needs to be done. But I just want to see if we're spending money going to these white ribbon breakfasts, that the community is actually benefiting, and we can communicate some of that in our third space, which is the community centres. That doesn't have to necessarily be limited to the Painty building.
Councillor Brew.
Thank you. Look, I want to speak in the same vein as the two past speakers. I think it's a useful report at one level, but it's a very unhelpful report at another. So thank you for bringing it to us. I think it's what we need to hear. And as Councillor Harris said, what happened in Queensland this last week is happening in every city and every town across Australia every day. So Prospect is not immune from that whatsoever, and I think we really take that responsibility seriously. The report talks about three different actions that are possible. One is no action, two, which I don't think is an option, two is proposed action, minor activities, and three is high visibility actions, major activities or services. So the report doesn't actually say that we want to do anything. I think it's just holding on until this toolkit is developed by the LGA. I remind you that this started back in 2016, in September 2016, when this was first put up as a motion from this council. It wasn't necessarily this council that did it, but it was this council that did it, if that makes sense. And I just think having this report but not having any actions out of it isn't kind of good enough for me. So I'd like to propose an amendment, and that amendment is part 2, which is that a report be brought back to the April 2020 council meeting.
Long.
No, it's not. No, I was just waiting for Jasmine to catch up. Yep. So that a report be brought back to the April 2020 council meeting on initiatives that can be undertaken in line with the LGA toolkit.
Initiatives that can be taken.
On initiatives that can be undertaken. Sorry, Jess. In line with the LGA toolkit. Toolkit, yeah, thank you. So I guess there's lots of great information here. There's lots of ideas that we could do, we might not do, we could do, but I just want to have something that we can actually say, yeah, we're doing this. And this report doesn't give it to us. We're just noting the things we can do. It's not saying what we are going to do. And I guess that's where I struggle with this report in its entirety, that it's not giving us any hook to actually do things. I think it is incumbent on us as a government organisation, as an authority to do more than just have noses and toilets or have something on the nose board that no one can see. I think we need to do more than that. So, yeah, really, I don't know what those actions are. I would expect the administration to come back to us and say this is what we can do within our existing resources, this is what we might need a budget bid for next year. This is what the toolkit's telling us, but I think September 2016 was when this started. We're now February 2020. I think we should do something.
Thank you. This is my custom. Mover, Councillor Harris, you happy to incorporate?
Yes.
Councillor Tobacco, happy to incorporate, and I'll seek leave of the meeting to incorporate. All those in favour of incorporating the change, all those against, it's thus incorporated. It becomes part of the motion. Anything further, Councillor Group?
No, thank you.
Any further debate, Councillor Barnett?
Yes, I'm really pleased that we're talking about this. But as I said, we need to get past the talk fest and into some very practical actions. As many of us will know, it's not easy being a domestic violence victim when every facet of your life is controlled, perhaps. But there are mechanisms, like for example on websites. I think they can have some app or whatever it is that can't, they can't sort of trace them and can be quickly sort of, I'm not sure what, but I just know about there are some very practical applications that if we can spread that, that sort of word to people. I know through my work being Secretary of the Australian Local Government Women's Association, SA branch, so we bought this, we made one of our years devoted to this as when the Respect 800 number was launched. So there were suggestions made there, like, councils could just have stickers on our rubbish bins promoting this on our garbage trucks, things that move around our area and can be seen by people. So I think there are some quite other innovative ways that we could be involved. So I look forward to seeing more about this.
Thank you. And just briefly from the Chair, I absolutely support all those comments, and I do want to see more happening. I just want to let you know that you've got a CEO who's incredibly supportive, already been in discussions with Town of Walkerville, who've done some great work in this space, I'm told. We're going to liaise with them and take their program and apply it here. I'm really delighted that we've got a CEO who believes in the White Ribbon accreditation cause. So I've tried that here before. I've been involved in White Ribbon now since I think a year after its inception in South Australia, and I've found it very difficult to get that taken on at this council. I think we've had it as a budget bid some years ago, didn't get up, and I haven't had staff that have wanted to actually follow it through and do something with it. Really grateful to those of you who've been to the White Ribbon breakfast over the years. I'm incredibly grateful to, I think Councillor Barnett raised this issue back in 2016, and for the council that supported it at the time. There's a lot we could do about this, that we could do nothing and say it's someone else's job. And I just don't think that's appropriate. We've got people that work in our organisation, we've got people on our council, we've got people in our community who look to us for access at the very least to the sorts of support they can get, and some of them look to us for a lot more than that. And we, I think, are obliged to do more in response to where our community's at. And I'm just astonished that as a nation we can't do better, that the rates of injuries and deaths against women is still like one a week. It's appalling. And I know you'll realise that. I know you'd know people who've been in those situations, and I hope that we can do something as a community place, as a centre of community health that can make a difference. So I encourage you to support the motion, and I'm grateful for the changes that have been accepted by the elected members and for the CEO's initiative on this already. Thank you. Is there any further debate? Councillor Rick.
Yeah, on this one, a number of years ago, a friend of mine and myself had to help a friend of ours escape a violent partner, and it took about 1.5 years, and finally got her, she was okay in the end, but on her feet, and I actually want to see our council take a lead in this. I think the attitude, we've got to change males' attitude towards women. We just have to, and we have to chip away at it. The time to act is now. The time for talk. Talk is fine, but we've got to back it up with action. because it was obviously as much as it was horrific seeing what happened interstate with that with the family that were burnt in their car. It's just happening. It's just too common. We have to be a leader in this space, and we can be a leader, and we have to change behaviour of men's attitude towards women.
Thank you. Any further debate? If not, Councillor Harris, wish to sum up.
Just to remind the staff that both Alison and myself had offered our services if people wanted to help talk, and thank you if we all say yes, and hopefully within months we can see some assistance to other people.
Excellent, thank you. Concludes debate. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Okay, that concludes information reports. Council member reports and briefings. Are there any? In the case, we'll move on to motions on notice. We have three. First one, item 14.1, Councillor De Backer, Australian flags and portrait of the Queen in the council meeting room, to Kandi Ku, page 258. Councillor.
Yes, the motion as put was not what I thought through, so I let the staff know. Just in regards to the first point, I'd actually put forward the Australian flags with no semicolon and no separate points. The Australian flag, the Aboriginal and the Torres Strait Islander flag, so it's not two optional things.
Sorry, Councillor, it's your motion. I'm just cognizant that it's also been advertised publicly, but it seems like a minor grammatical change.
Yeah.
So can we just get that right?
Flag. Yep, thank you.
Is that as you proposed it?
Yes.
And get rid of items 1 and 2 underneath?
Yes,
okay, thank you. I'm happy to say that doesn't
Change the
change the intent as advertised. Yeah.
South Australian state flag and an official portrait of photograph of Queen of Australia, Her Majesty Queen II. So this was just in November last year, obviously coming back to the new building. There had been talk, I guess, in the civic space of some sort of recognition of it being a civic space when it is in use. So I sort of queried, I guess, the absence of flags or regalia or whatever you want to call it, and it was basically referred back to me that the room, because it's a multi-purpose room, it's not a dedicated space. Therefore, when it was talked about with the community reference group for the building, it had been discussed that they didn't want people to be inhibited of using the space, which is a fair point. The only thing that I wanted to, I suppose, talk about is the fact, just in regards to, I suppose, civic space and meetings, when we've changed those kind of things before, like when we did, we changed from a prayer to a pledge, and again, that was sort of around, the council meetings, and there was a lot of consultation around that with the community. So obviously, with these kind of things, there are sensitivities around it, and I just don't think we broadly consulted with the community into regards to the flag or the flags and monarch or lack thereof. So this is a proposal to consult with the community. It's not to say which ones you want to consult on or the rest of it, but I just think it's really important that we do. I know for when we have citizenship ceremonies, we actually have temporary flags that are brought out, and you can actually, there's all booklets about how to display them properly and in the right way. For conferences, you can have small ones at the end of the table or on a stand, that kind of thing. So I think there are temporary solutions, but it just hasn't been offered up. So I think it would be wise to consult with our community. Again, just the optics around this is a term I've heard people use. I know when I went to the Australian Local Government Conference last year, one of the big things we wanted as local government was to be part of the Constitution. So we're here but for the grace of the state government, and I think certainly just around that it might be just recognising that we are a government and maybe displaying the flags and if that's something that the community wants to see in this setting. So I encourage you to support the motion to consult with our community on the presence of these items during council meetings.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ripp, you wish to speak to it?
Yeah, look, I think it's an excellent motion. So thank you for bringing it forward to us, Councillor De Backer. And we've had, obviously, these things displayed before. I would say in regards to the staff comment that where it says, the council meeting room is no longer a dedicated chamber as it was known in the past. At the end of the day, for now, this is our dedicated chamber. There are plenty of options where we can look at having temporary flags on display and temporary portraits. So for that to be used as a reason why we're not having it, I don't think is strong enough. I'd like to see, well, depending on how the community consultation works, I would love to have these, all three of those on display, or A, B and C on display in our council meeting room. I think it's a great tradition. We're all in favour of it, and I think by going back and consulting with our community, we can seek their views, and so I'm very happy with the motion.
Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Pearce?
Just how are we going to consult with the community?
Say again?
So how are we going to consult with the community? What form is that going to take?
CEO? Well,
Through the chair, to be determined, really. I mean, I'll liaise with corporate services and communications team. I've got a couple of staff that are dedicated part of their role in community engagement, so we'll take advice from them. We'll also look at what we did. I think it was a council-driven initiative to consult on a prayer to a pledge, but we'll look at what we did for that, given the similarities, and we'll move forward from there.
Thank you. Councillor, anything further?
Oh, look, I just think it'd be difficult. Given we've got a very small response to our speeding questions, I don't see many people replying to it, to be honest. But anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Group.
Similar question, what would the cost be to consult with the community?
Through the chair, depends on the approach taken. Given there's a zero budget allocation for this exercise, it would be staff time in probably preparing an online survey, Facebook posts. We'd have a look at potentially call flutes across the city. However, there's a cost for call flutes.
My concern is, I think if I spoke to 10 people, 9.5 of them wouldn't care whether we have flags or the Queen here, to be honest. That's just my perception. I don't think they would really care. I'm not sure whether I care whether they're in here or not, to be honest. I'm not sure whether it's going to make our debate any better or worse or the same. What I am supportive of is if we think we need them here, we should just do it. Like, I don't think this is necessarily something that we should go for consultation on. We believe the flag should be here, and I'm not opposed to that. Then let's just bring the flags in. And if we think the picture of Her Majesty should be here, then we bring the photo of Her Majesty in. I would have no problems making a leadership decision as elected member to say we want those things in our chamber. I'm just concerned that limited, we always talk about this limited budget, limited resources. To go to consultation may take those resources away from something which I personally might deem more important than consulting on this. I'd rather support a motion that says let's just bring it back.
Thank you. Councillor Barnett.
So it's my understanding that we're compelled to do it under the citizenship ceremonies.
Yes.
We do a citizenship ceremony, that we're not compelled under any law to have them in the chamber here or the meeting room. And I think we already have flags flying in two places, outside or when we get the
St Helens.
up and down at St Helens Park. So I think that's a significant, symbolic gesture to that. So as the Queen of Australia, now I can't remember when we last had it in the chambers, it'll be decades ago, and nobody's ever spoken to me about it. And most probably be more modern, and that to actually have one of the governor as the Queen's representative here in Australia, in South Australia at least, be more relevant, I should imagine.
Thank you. Further debate, Councillor Wayne?
I'd be more inclined to make that decision, agree with Councillor Groot, that if we decide to put the flags and the picture of Majesty the Queen up in this room, we should just do it and not go out and consult when we don't have the budget for it. What will be the consequence of us putting it up here or not putting it in here? So, you know, with no money allocated, if we decide, yes, let's do it, then we should just find our spot in this room and stick it up. The flag, sorry.
Stick it up.
Well, the flags up in the you know, have a space for the picture. Temporary.
Thank you. Councillor Harris.
Well, I'm glad I can follow that one. I actually agree with the last two sentences. I brought my own picture of the Queen with me.
Don't show it to us.
Oh, that's all right, I won't. Look, I actually thank someone for bringing it up for an area, and I'd comment in A and B and then C as separate. And I comment in A and quite point blank point out, as a Republican, I find the flag not quite the correct thing with the Union Jack in the corner. But to the surprise of maybe many people that know I have a strong attitude to those first two, I still support them being around because they are the Australian flag of today. And hopefully one day we change it, but they are the flag, so we could have it around. I have a big problem with C because I have no respect whatsoever for the Queen and royalty, and they shouldn't have any part of our country. And I'm not going to go down the track because I'd get too worked up about it, that when I see that we don't have to, and I'm not talking about citizenship ceremony, you know, that's, or anything else that it's compelled. I'm not talking about, I'm just talking about day to day, that I don't think we should have it. And Christine and I went through it ages ago and lost the thing of getting rid of the Queen, but at least we got a modern day photo because they had one when she was 27 years old riding a horse. And that was so outdated, and the only compromise was to get a modern photo. But I don't believe we should have the Queen. I think Australia as it is, and we are local government, and i.e. the word is government, we're part of the government and the people we represent, that I think it's us, the hierarchy here, and you won't hear me say this that often, is David O'Loughlin's our mayor. He's elected people of Prospect to look after us in government things, and then we are people that are elected around him to do that. The people sitting alongside you are employed to do that same task. So I in no way support number C unless it's citizenship ceremony. But the other ones, we can have them up. But I do agree with, cutting out one sentence, but agree with the other people that we're a government office, we should have flags. If we decide we want them here, I'm not that keen on, wouldn't really fit in, but if we want to have them here, we just have them. We shouldn't waste money to go out and ask, because I don't think, apart from a very few people, we'll have people screaming not to have them.
Thank you. Just really briefly for me, I'm just cognizant of time. I kind of agree with Councillor Barnett. Flags at the front, flags in the park, clearly a government building. The Chamber hasn't had much of that paraphernalia about it for, in my memory, in decades is probably the right thing. The standard flags we use at citizenship ceremony has had a home in the Chamber for years. I'm not sure that was deliberate or because there was no other home for it. But anyway, that was there. Citizenship ceremonies, we are required by law to have the other things in the room. It is a little bit of an embarrassment in terms of the amount of free wall space in this building. We wanted a building that was light and airy. We got it, but there's lots of windows. We can't actually put up our council's art collection in many places because there are so few walls. And on top of that, maybe this is self-interest, but I say this on behalf of former Mayor Barnett, the lovely record of history of mayors and chairpersons in the council, which includes, of course, a fine portrait of former Mayor Barnett, is languishing in the corridor and not up on a wall anywhere because we've got no wall to put it on. So I have asked the staff to keep rolling out Prospects Art Collection and including that and resolve the space for it. So I'm looking forward to what they do about some artefacts like that. But it is a little challenge because of the way we have chosen to design the building. So I don't resolve from that, but it's just surprisingly few places to hang things. This motion is about consulting with the community. I think my view is probably the same as others. I'm not sure we need to consult the community about this. We could make this decision. I think I think that's where it's at. So I'm probably not going to vote for this, but I'm happy to have a discussion around, well, what do we do to make this look more like a council decision-making place when we're in session, but not to the point that other people don't feel welcome in between our uses of it, which are, of course, the minor use of the space now. So I haven't concluded my thinking on the outcome, but I don't think we need to consult, I guess, is where we're at. So thank you. Any further debate? Okay.
Question, if this for whatever it doesn't get up in terms of the consulting with the community bit, could someone bring back a similar motion without the consulting bit? Would that be open? I'm just thinking because obviously it'll only be partially different to the one tonight. Would that won't be a problem?
Procedurally, no. Yeah, it's not a rescission motion or a repeat. Yeah. Any further debate? Thinking back to Councillor Backer, if you wish to sum up.
Yeah, I would. I thank you for the debate, and I think the motion certainly stirred up some commentary that I hope to put around the table without me having to really reveal what I think is actually a community consultation. But it certainly that's given some direction and some of the sentiment around the table. So look, I think it is important to consider, and if a motion does come back in the future, we'll look at it then. I'm always keen to consult with the community. I never think things are so-called a waste of money, but obviously you'd have to have a measured consultation within sort of the budget lines or lack thereof that we have. So I'll be obviously supporting this motion. The sentiment around the table, that might not be the case, but look, it is a sensitive thing. I guess I expected a sort of temporary flag thing to go up while we were in session. That didn't happen, so it looks like it might have to come back as a motion. But I'll be supporting the consultation. I think that's always the best way to go.
Okay, thank you. That concludes the debate. All those in favour? All those against? It is lost. Thank you. We have a second motion on notice, 14.2 from Councillor Ripp, smoke-free zones within the City of Prospect.
Thank you. I will read it out. The Council resolves Part 1, a report be provided to the May 2020 Council meeting to clarify the existing smoke-free zones within the City of Prospect, and point 2, that the report includes discussion of the process and costs associated with potential expansion of existing smoke-free zones or creation of new smoke-free zones. So, look, the reason I want to bring this to people's attention is looking at this, I want a report to come back to obviously, because what I'd like to know first of all what our existing smoke-free zones are and about any potential opportunities to expand those zones and create new zones. And I want to also obviously consider cost implications as well. So that's why I think it'd be best placed to come back as a report first. But I think we need to do what we can to. I know on private land and some elements of public land we can't. We potentially can't touch, but I think we need to be deterring people away from smoking as much as possible, particularly in public places. I've had some residents, this is what sparked this motion, I've had some resident feedback, particularly at cafes, dining. They don't want to be passively smoking, and I agree with them. If I'm having a meal on Prospect Road, or if I'm walking in a park, I don't want to be passively smoking, and I've had that feedback from residents that are asthmatic and non-asthmatic, that they don't want to have to. It is people's personal choice whether they smoke or not, but where they smoke can impact other residents. So I think I'd like to get this report back first, but I think we need to be doing what we can to deter people from smoking on our public land, and I'll leave those comments there, and I welcome other people's thoughts.
Okay, I have a seconder. Councillor Group, we should speak to it.
Look, I won't add anything further. I agree with everything Councillor Rip said. I think particularly close by to food shops, and there's a repeat offender not too far from here all the time, so outside his cafe, doing it next to the no smoking sign from this table sign. So I totally agree with Councillor Rip and will support it.
I see you're talking about. Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor De Backer.
Just a question, just in regards to breaches. Can breaches actually affect liquor licences at all? There's a couple of places I've seen that have, again, repeat offenders.
Yeah, absolutely.
Director?
Through the chair, we can actually fine people for smoking in non-smoking areas, but we would have to make an actual application to the Liquor Licensing Commission, and I don't know that that would be successful. You'd have to actually approach them about it.
Thank you. Councillor, anything further?
Well, I fully support the motion.
Thank you. Any further debate? If not?
Sorry, can I just clarify something? The Director said a brief question. Sorry, Director, you said that we can currently fine people. The report says we can't fine people. Can I just get clarity on that? So it says here, Prospect has not applied for officers to issue expiation under the Act.
Okay.
Director?
When I was investigating the outdoor dining policy, there is a ability under the Act to fine people, whether it's us fining or other people fining, but you can actually fine can be imposed.
Yeah, I don't think we can. Well, based on what I'm reading in the report, we can't fine them. So I just thought you said before to answer to Councillor De Backer's question that you could fine.
We can fine them.
I think technically councils can fine people in breach, but we can't fine people as City of Prospect.
That might be a matter of clarifying in the report, should this get up, as to what's involved in doing that. Is that a simple letter, or is that a 3-month training program for our staff? But anyway, any further debate? If not, Councillor Rip, wish to sum up?
That's fine, thank you.
Please debate. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Look forward to seeing that one. Item 14.3, Councillor Nguyen, fruit fly outbreak resources and awareness campaigns.
I'll just read it. Request Biosecurity SA to provide further educational resources and or awareness campaigns on the fruit fly outbreak in the affected households in the City of Prospect. So just before Christmas, there was a fruit fly outbreak in Blairthorpe. The discovery of the pest was from a backyard, from a apricot tree. Consequently, residents living in within 1.5 kilometres of the breakout area have been under quarantine. The affected areas in our city consist of Broadview, Collingwood, Nailsworth, Prospect and Sefton Park. PISA, Primary Industry and Regions SA have immediately started an eradication program to eliminate the fruit flies. I'm concerned that there's not enough information out there for our residents, because this is what I got in the post. It was just that and a few of these baiting notifications. I'm just concerned that, for our residents who don't speak English or can understand, like, how would they be able to understand this communication? I have seen that we have put out 2 Facebook posts on Council's Facebook page regarding the outbreak, and I think from memory there were about 56 comments on the first post. So some of the information, some of the comments on there were, where is this area, what do we do, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just thinking there's not enough information out there for the residents affected by this. So hence the motion, just wanting to see if council can make contact with Biosecurity SA to see if there's anything else they can provide, materials in other languages, increase their campaign, just to, bring it to the attention of our residents.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder?
Yes,
Councillor Barnett.
and I might comment on, every time I've seen the tiny little map that's provided in the, it must be the advertiser or one of the papers, you could hardly read it, you could hardly understand it. And some, residents have said, are we in it or not? So I just said, well, I don't know from the map, couldn't tell. Contact, whatever the number is. Yeah, so, it'd be quite useful if they had some material that's on the site and you can actually choose, like language you wanted. You know, if they were online, don't necessarily have to be perhaps, you know, in written brochure form.
Thank you. Any further debate? Councillor Nguyen, you wish to sum up your excellent speech, and Councillor Barnett's? And that concludes debate. All those in favour? Against is carried unanimously. Thank you. That concludes the motions on notice. Questions with notice are a nil. Confidential items are a nil. Councillors, staff, gallery, and now close the meeting.